Chapter 17. The Origin. Legion. The Origin. If you ignore the past, you jeopardize the future. 2 days after Stain's arrest. Recently business has been bad. Less people willing to do crimes, less people willing to buy gear. My buddies are starting to lose out. With the laws against unlicensed support equipment and costumes, and the fact that legit support companies are starting to sell on the black market, I imagine it's only been tougher. Jiren said to his buddy as they drank and smoked in a bar. What a pain. I miss the times before All Might. I was younger then, too. Villains used to be wild, impulsive, and that meant that the entire country was enthusiastic. It was a good time, the man said before slamming down his glass. But then All Might came and everything changed. The symbol of justice. I keep hoping to hear the day that he retires, but with this new UA student on the block, it feels like even with his retirement, things won't calm down for us. He sighed in defeat. Maybe I should just retire. About that, listen to this. Between you and me, I know how to make some cash. I'm only telling you, 'cause I know you guys have quality goods. Have you seen this video? Jiren asked as he held up his phone. Kill the hero Stain. No. Who is it? It's a video of the hero killer. He's trending on the underground right now, Jiren said as he pressed play. As the video played, various images of Stain appeared as a dialogue began. Hero killer, Stain. Real name, Kaizomakaguro. All Might's debut left a deep impression on him, and he set his sights on becoming a hero. He enrolled in a private hero high school but was disappointed by the fundamentally depraved view of heroes taught by the educational system. He dropped out in the summer of his first year. An animation of a shadowy figure preaching to inattentive masses appeared. Until the end of his teenage years, he called for a return for the old idea of heroes, making speeches on the street until he realized resignedly that words had no power. The video transitions to a view of him from behind in his costume. In order to fulfill his duty, for the next 10 years he studied and trained in killing techniques on his own. During this time, his parents passed away, and that affair was considered non-criminal. A city, static interrupting the still image. He emphasized a return to the old idea of heroes. An alley and various shots of buildings. Heroes should not seek compensation. The title of hero must only be granted to those who epitomize self-sacrifice. The present-day heroes are fakes who are all talk. He wanted society to realize this through his purges one after another. A video of Stain's final stand. Someone must be dyed in blood. I must take back what it means to be a hero.
Come.
Try and get me. You fakes. Only a true hero will be allowed to kill me. Only they are worthy. Only All Might and Mandalore. The video ended, and Jiren's associate leaned back in shock and intrigue. This keeps getting uploaded and taken down online, like a game of cat and mouse. Both sides have realized this, especially the last part. This guy's way of life is infectious, from hardcore criminals to felons on the run. Every major player on the field, and yes, that includes me. Jiren said with a grin. It hasn't been noticed by the public yet, but the evil that was scattered, hiding in the shadows, has been hit by a single fever, to unite under one banner. To join the organization Hero Killer, Stain is part of. They're heading to the League of Villains. As he spoke, various figures in cities around Japan made their way, soon to be united under that single banner. Back to our previously scheduled program. Izuku Midoriya was many times driven by his instinct to protect and save people, which is why the combination of factors, a little girl, apparently in rags and bandages, asking for help, his sudden headache that he knew indicated danger, and the fact that he could hear footsteps down the alley made his next course of action very obvious. He grabbed the girl and booked it. Crap, I can actually feel her pursuers around me. Who the hell is this little girl? Izuku thought as he looked down and saw the girl desperately clutch at his clothes. It doesn't matter, he thought as he tightened his grip around her. I have to get her to safety. My permission has been rescinded, so that means that using my quirk will definitely get me in trouble. More than that, however, is that it makes me easily distinguishable. He ran through the quiet streets, hearing various footsteps behind him. But I don't care. I will save this girl. Behind you. Izuku ducked as a gunshot rang out, echoing down the abandoned street. He could feel the girl tense in his arms as he made his way down the street. Poor thing is jumpy. I need to get her out of here. And I need to get... You idiot. You could have shot her. Izuku merely kept running, his quirk flaring up as he sped through alleys and streets. Unfortunately, due to the chaos, he'd ended back up in the abandoned areas, so there was nobody to call for help. At least not from nearby. Wristcom, please. With a flash on his wrist, a wristcom appeared. Unfortunately, he couldn't do anything with his arms full. Hey kid, what's your name?
Eri.
All right, Eri. I'm here for you, but I need you to do something for me. See that button on my wrist?
Y.
Do me a favor and press it, please.
Okowo.
She said as she pressed it, and it started to blink green. When the VOD had first established the idea of a communication hub, the teachers had been all for it. Since then, it had become one of UA's few 24-hour watches, as clones would constantly rotate throughout the day to maintain communications with the students who were out on internships or work studies. It was a surprisingly generally accepted new addition to the students' costumes. Some minor protests here and there, but nothing of note once Nizu got involved. That being said, the clone that had drawn the short stick and had the midnight watch was currently bored out of his mind. Still paid attention, though. Man, I know that they were in trouble and everything, but I really wish I had last night's watch instead of this one. Yeah, I hear you, man, but hey, least it means that everybody's safe. Another one said to the side. Humph. Then a light started blinking. That's Mandalor's light. I've got a bad feeling about this. I'll wake up the commander. The clone then pressed the button and responded. Mandalore, we've received your signal. What's the situation? Hashtag, I'm currently being pursued by unknown assailants. I've got a potential child kidnapping situation here. Hashtag. What? The clone roared in shock before he then slammed down a red button on the panel. Immediately screens went red and alerts went out, waking up the teachers and putting the VOD on alert. Hashtag comms. What's going on? Hashtag Cody asked as they got corresponding lights from Aizawa. All Might, Nizu. Hell, all the teachers were on alert and trying to reach them. Quickly pressing a button to open up communications to all of them, he relayed the info. Sir, Mandalore's being pursued by villains. Potential child trafficking incident. Hashtag what? Hashtag. Hashtag comms. We're on our way. Midoriya. Can you hear me? Hashtag. Hashtag yes, sensei hashtag. Hashtag relay the situation. Hashtag. Izuku ducked as he dodged another blast from an enemy. They were trailing behind him. I took a walk to get myself away from the reporters, ran into a little girl that's in rags and bandages, asking me for help. Now I'm being chased down by her pursuers. Hashtag damn it problem child. Not even a full day and you're already in trouble. Damn it fine. Use your quirk and get yourself to a police station. Hashtag. I've been trying, but so far I've passed by 3 police stations and they've all been shut down. Hashtag what? Hashtag. Hashtag damn it. That means you're not dealing with just any random group. You're dealing with an organized crime group. That means Yakuza. Hashtag Aizawa said as Izuku dodged some more attacks. Yakuza? I thought they were extinct. Hashtag not extinct, merely underground. But more on that later. If they've got influence over Hosu's police stations, they might have influence among the minor hero agencies too. The only one you'd be safe it would have been Ingenium's, but it's on the other side of the city, and they're still reeling from Ingenium's fall. You need to get out of there now. I'm giving you full quirk permission. Don't make me regret it. Hashtag. Yes, sir. Izuku allowed more of one for all to flow through him as he bounced up an alley and made his way to the rooftops. I need to get out of here. I need to get us to safety. I need to get faster. He kept on bouncing across roofs, searching for something that could get him away quick enough. Highway. Izuku's attention was brought toward the highway in the distance, although he was confused as to why. Go. New ability. Izuku smiled. It looked like Legion was coming through again, as well as the previous users. All right, Nana. I trust you. Putting in more speed, Izuku kept moving through the rooftops while keeping his grip secure. The two moved quickly, and taking a look behind him, he saw that there were at least 10 people following him on the roofs and probably more on the streets. That part of the highway's been shut down since last night, That means I've got a straightaway and can use my speed to my advantage and lose them. Get as much height as you can. Right. Putting everything into his feet, he jumped and practically shot into the air like a cannonball, the roof almost collapsing beneath him. High in the air, and making it above the highway, Izuku wondered what exactly they wanted him to do. Focus on me. Izuku did so, concentrating on Nana and how she made him feel, how she helped him, how he already considered her part of his family, his Babir, grandparent, and his descent halts, or rather, it begins to slow down as he slowly begins to float down until he reaches the bottom. Good, now focus. You can't stop here. They'll be right behind you. Make a portal. Focus on me. Okay, Nana. He extends out his hand, and another portal appears next to him as something long was pushed out. It looked like a motorcycle, but only barely. At least twice as long as a motorcycle, with a hump design along the back and a narrow, elongated front, and what looked like miniature jet engines attached to it. And if he wasn't mistaken, there were 2 blasters on the front of it. Oh, and apparently it floated. What the hell is this thing? What even is my quirk? No time. Get on. Behind you. Izuku glanced behind him and saw cars and motorcycles approaching his position. Wow, they really are Yakuza. He thought as he got on. Sitting Eri in his lap, he told her to hold on as tight as she could and to not look up for anything. How do I work this thing? The handlebars, right one's a throttle, then you have the brake and blaster buttons. This thing's not like a regular motorcycle. You're telling me. Just go. Izuku throttled, the bike jerking harshly, but eventually he managed to gain speed. Too fast. Slowing down to a more manageable speed, he looked behind him and saw that while the motorcycles and cars were way behind him, they would surely catch up eventually. Midoriya. We just detected a high spike in speed and a sudden deceleration. What just happened? Are you injured? Nope. Legions evolved again. I'm now on some kind of hover bike, booking it down the highway. What? Yep. This is my life now. Problem child. I have no words. Mandalore. We've pulled up a map and are currently tracking your position, considering the speed at which you're going and the highway you're currently on. The best thing you can do for maximum security is get on the Tomei Expressway. Right, that will lead me straight to Shizuoka and I can get to UA. Izuku exclaimed with excitement before suddenly jerking to the right as something flew by him. Crap, they're gaining on me. Midoriya. Pro heroes have already been alerted and will meet you on the expressway, but you're still about 12 kilometers out. Got it. Hearing the roar of engines near him, he turned to the side and saw riders coming up next to him, carrying guns and reaching out toward the girl. He would not let them have her. Increasing speed for just a moment, he then summoned one of his blasters. He gulped as he stared at it, but as he looked at the little girl in his arms, unconscious from all the stress, his heart hardened and his eyes narrowed in resolve. He slowed down, much to the bikers' surprise, and 2 quick shots to their bikes quickly blew out their engines and made them crash. He forced himself to ignore how they were likely to be seriously injured, if not dead. Forced himself to ignore how these injuries were far more serious than what he did to Stain. He would protect this girl, no matter what. Fortunately, it seemed that they were standing back, probably surprised by the brutality that he just displayed by disposing of 2 of their men already. Left. Izuku jerked to the left, nearly losing control of the bike as more bullets and quirk attacks came after him. Damn it, I thought they wanted the girl. Why would they risk hurting her? Suddenly, 2 cars sped past him, their windows opening, and more men peeking out. Only this time they had hand weapons and were trying to get close. Izuku braked to gain some distance and hesitantly opened fire. The blue blaster bolts stood out against the night as they impacted against the cars. One of them ended up losing their rear tires and swerved, crashing into the other. He noticed that the girl was tensing and whimpering and decided that enough was enough. Don't fail me now. Speeding up even more, he was practically leaving them in the dust. But he was mostly worried about not losing control. Careful VOD. You're going at about 250 kilometers per hour, 155 miles per hour. On the bright side, you've only got a couple kilometers left. Understood. Hashtag Midoriya. Security cameras along the highway are detecting your pursuers. It looks like they're pulling back. They must have found out about the heroes. Hashtag. Good. Izuku said as he breathed out a sigh of relief and stopped the bike next to the heroes. Soon enough he was surrounded. You Mandalore? Yeah. All right. My crew's here to escort you back to UA. How's the kid? The hero asked, and Izuku looked down at the girl in his arms, who was clutching him tightly but looked at him with the most adoring eyes. You did it. She breathed out in awe as her eyes started to slump. Thank you. She mumbled as she fell asleep, the adrenaline leaving her body. Izuku felt something tight in his throat, wondering just what they had done to her. Staring at her with gentle eyes, he gently rubbed her hair, the little girl's expression becoming tense for a moment before relaxing. He smiled at her softly and hugged her tightly, making sure to give her the comfort she needed. Looking back up to the hero who was helping him, said hero was looking at him with a knowing smirk. What? Heh, don't get too attached now, kid. Remember, she might have a family. He remarked as a couple of heroes loaded his bike into a truck and they entered a car. Izuku sat in the back seat with Eri, the little girl refusing to let go of him, even for the paramedics on standby. It was decided that since she didn't have any obvious injuries, that it'd be better if she was checked over by Recovery Girl at UA. As they continued the 2-hour ride to UA, Izuku grew tired once more and fell asleep, still holding her tightly. We won't be able to follow them. Too many heroes and none under our influence. We're already far enough from our main base. This is troubling. Eri has fallen into the hero's hands. We must get her back. A small silence filled the group. Dibs on not telling Overhaul.
Dia damit.
The next morning, Izuku found himself in Recovery Girl's room at UA, a large welt on his head. Ow. Damn it, woman. Too bad, Sonny. I've diagnosed you with stupid. Here's your prescription. Ow. What was that for? What was going through your mind when you thought that taking a little girl through the highway on a floating motorcycle at almost 300 kilometers per hour was a good idea? Do you have any idea of the damage that you could have done? She ranted as she waved her oversized syringe around. It's not like I asked for the Yakuza to chase me. Izuku snarked as he dodged another swipe. Hey, don't get smart with me, boy. Izuku waved her off before he settled and faced her seriously. How is she? She's asleep, but her condition is worrying. Malnourishment, dry skin, and hair due to lack of vitamin C. The only case of rickets I've even heard about in the last 300 years, and there's a lot of scarring on her arms and legs. Surgical scarring. She trailed off as she began to shake in fury and grief. Izuku glared at the floor, furious at the monsters that had done that to her. I'm glad I found her then. The door then opened and All Might, Nizu, Aizawa, and Tsukachi walked in. As are we, young Midoriya. You've done good, although you certainly did push the line this time, and unfortunately, it's cut down on a lot of our options. Nizu said as they took a seat. Sirs. Izuku bowed his head in greeting. We're glad to see that you made it back safely with the girl, and I'm glad to hear that your quirk has evolved once more, although I think we should say adapted, instead as evolution deals with Nizu began before All Might cleared his throat. Ehem, sir? All Might pleaded, and Nizu nodded. Ah yes, unfortunately I don't have time to ramble. Anyway, you caused quite a ruckus with the Yakuza last night. I know, I had to use my quirk and I'm unlicensed. And I have a feeling that this time isn't going to be as easy as the last, is it? Izuku grimly chuckled as he readied himself to face the news. Were any of them killed? Currently unknown at the moment, the heroes went back to investigate, but there was no sign of the Yakuza or the vehicles. Whoever they are, they cleaned it up quickly and efficiently. Aizawa began. Although the words didn't exactly bring comfort to Izuku. I know that your clones have killed before, but you haven't had the misfortune of taking a life yet. Aizawa consoled as he grabbed Izuku's shoulder, the latter having his head bowed. I'd like for you to speak with Hound Dog later for some counseling. Yes, Sensei. Anyway, we've already had to deal with the commission in your stead, and I told them that I gave you permission to defend yourself, and the girl after you immediately reported to us that you were being chased. Unfortunately, Tsukachi continued, The news has already caught wind of your actions last night and more questions are being raised, especially after your takedown of Stain. Which reminds me, good job on that. Izuku nodded his thanks before turning to Nizu, who turned on a TV in the room. Yes, your work has been most admirable, but now it's put you under even greater scrutiny. Quite simply, the Commission has been wanting you under their heel for a while now, ever since they saw your potential from the USJ attack. They've been putting pressure so that you can be under their control and not just a student at UA. Nizu said as the TV was switched to the news. UA hero student attacked. Last night, UA hero student, Midoriya Izuku, hero name still unknown, was discharged from the hospital. On a leisurely walk and disguised, the young hero was then assaulted by an unknown number of villains and criminals, taking with him a young girl who was presumably in the vicinity to safety. A reporter said as she stood in front of Hosu General. The young hero in training, already wildly popular and trending on social media due to his public takedown of the notorious hero killer, Stain, was forced to run for his and the girl's life, eventually making his way to the Tomei Expressway where he traveled multiple kilometers on an unknown vehicle until he could receive backup from professionals. The scene switched from the hospital to the roads, where although the vehicles were missing, much of the road had been damaged due to the explosions. Although the young student is being praised for being able to escape and save the girl with him, critics have called to attention the damage caused to roofs, streets, and the expressway itself, with some wondering about whether or not accountability will be enforced by UA. Izuku turned to the teachers, still worried but slightly confused. That's not as bad as I thought it would be. Yes, well, let's just say that Akamura is a good friend of mine, and UA alumni from all courses tend to look out for each other. Nizu said as he switched the channel. That was the good news, however. This is why we are here. HPSC representative addresses concerns over UA student. Sir, although Midoriya has done well so far in his career, late events have called to attention his lack of experience and his unlicensed actions. What then will be done to show accountability? Aizawa scoffed. Sir, that's Nakamura. She's a reporter planted by the HPSC that asks the questions they want to answer. While we are glad that Stain is off the streets and the young Midoriya is safe, we will endeavor to ensure that proper protocols are followed and that accountability is required of both him and UA. The TV then turned off. So you see, young Midoriya, we're quite in a pickle. Although we are glad that you saved that girl, the fact of the matter is that now we have to bump our schedule, so to speak. Nizu said as he then grinned to Aizawa and All Might. The latter too groaned in defeat. Sir, beer? What's wrong? Don't get me wrong, my boy. I am extremely proud of all the hard work you've put in and I do believe that you have a chance of succeeding, but Nizu's plan to help you is unorthodox to say the least. All Might said with a grimace. More like insane. This isn't something we even do until they reach their second year. Are you sure that you want to do this now for one first year, sir? Aizawa asked, pleading for one last chance to try another way. This is the best way. It serves as a compromise between UA, young Midoriya, and the Commission. Being a student, being a hero, and following the proper protocols. Nizu said with a smirk. Hold up and excuse me, but I am very confused right now. What do you even want me to do? Izuku asked as his three teachers faced him. It's quite simple, young Midoriya. We want you to get your provisional license. Ha 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 ha. Stop laughing. Seriously? Seriously, Bakugo? Kirishima and Shiro laughed as they mocked Bakugo's new hairstyle. My hair's gotten used to it. It won't go back even after I wash it. Besides, I'm not the only one. The damn clone that came with me is also stuck like that. He said as he pointed at the clone across from him near the window. I don't know what you're talking about, Aruedi. He said as he took off his helmet and revealed curly, puffed-up hair. The clone smirked at him. I'll kill you all. I'd like to see you try, side part boy. Boom. What you'd say. He roared as his hair exploded back to its usual style. It came back. Nearby, Ashido was excitedly talking with Tsuyu and the newly named monk, the latter regaling them with Tsuyu's heroism during their internship. Tsuyu's internship. On the Oki Mariner, Selkie's personal ship, Tsuyu wiped her brow of sweat as she finished swabbing the deck. Serious, Selkie's top sidekick soon met up with her along with the clone that had followed her, the latter having gone through some aquatic training on the side. Sirius came by with some drinks for the three of them, and they relaxed for a bit. It must be boring, huh? Just cleaning and training all day? Sirius asked. Yes, a little. It was the same for me when I did my internship. I was confused by the difference between the image I had of a hero as a kid and what I was experiencing. I certainly expected it to be showier. Sirius explained before she leaned her chin on her hand. But in reality, it's a daily grind of training, patrols, and cleaning. On top of that, I even had to wash the captain's underwear. She exclaimed in annoyance. What part of this is being a hero? I thought. Did you get tired of it? Tsuyu asked. At first, I did. But after becoming the captain's sidekick, I realized what was really important for a hero. What's really important for a hero? What is it? You'll have to find that out for yourself. But let me tell you something I learned when we once did a collab with America's Navy. Embrace the suck. Embrace the suck? Yep, sometimes you just have to do something no matter how sucky it is. It helped put things into perspective for me. Again, use this time to discover what's really important for heroes yourself, right? She riveted in agreement. Hey, Froppy, what are you standing around for? I get that frogs have big mouths, but that doesn't mean you should be gabbing and serious. I thought I told you to supervise her and the clone's swim lessons. I don't know if that's racist or not. The clone thought to himself. I mean, he is a seal. I just finished cleaning, Captain. Yeah, and we just finished swim lessons, and I've been supervising her just fine. Right. Oh, is that right? Selkie said with some regret.
I guess he jumped to conclusions.
He trailed off as he rubbed his head in embarrassment. I see. My bad. He then struck a pose.
I'm sorry.
A moment of silence. Selkie began to laugh as he faced them and asked a question. Was I too cute for words, Froppy? The clone snorted. She's dumbfounded. Sirius began as she stood up and pinched the bridge of her nose. I always say this, but you just can't make your face cute. Below the neck, you're just too macho. As Selkie looked at her in disbelief, she continued. Your face is also too rugged, though. What did you say? He asked, affronted. When I do this for kids, they love it. Sirius pointed her finger at his face. Yeah, they love making fun of it, she said as he began to walk back from her. Because it's not cute at all. My own sidekick, who I've raised since her internship, how could you betray me like this? And in front of my new interns, too? Extremely easily.
Shock.
The clone merely laughed. How cute. Tsuyu thought. Captain Selkie, a sailor called out from the bridge. There's a message from the Japan Coast Guard. All right, I'll be there right away. Selkie replied as he made his way up. Froppy, 0401. Help me unfasten the ropes. We'll probably be sailing out. Right. Ribbit. The preparations were completed and a new mission was received, and soon enough they found themselves leaving the harbor at full speed. Many miles later, the full details of their mission was revealed as the sun began to set over the horizon. Stowaways? Yep, the Coast Guard got a tip that there were stowaways on the trade ship, Nyson. The ship was inspected, but the stowaways were nowhere to be found. But after careful investigation, they found cargo missing from the ship's freight list. Selkie then turned to his intern. What do you think happened, Froppy? Surprised at being called, she nonetheless answered. Ribbit. I think that before the Coast Guard arrived, the stowaways moved the cargo to another ship and ran away. They may have been smuggling brokers. Selkie smiled and then did another cute pose, praising her correct answer. That's not cute. Everybody else in the room thought. Well, everybody except for Froppy. All right. Our job then is to secure the stowaways thought to have escaped on a small boat and deliver them to the Coast Guard. Selkie would then go on to explain the parameters of their mission. Pulling up a map and the necessary data, they estimated the approximate location of the stowaways and the direction they could have gone. Fortunately, the Coast Guard would be helping them with their investigation, and as such they were only in charge of a relatively smaller area. They would search by radar, while Selkie himself would search the ocean. As the hours passed by, They found themselves unable to see anything in the middle of the ocean night, however, upon receiving a call from the Coast Guard, found out that the stowaways were heading in their direction. Selkie soon returned, having confirmed the location, and as they shut off everything, stealthily approached their quarry. Finally making it to the ship, Selkie gave the order to approach and board and for Froppy and the clone to stay behind, although Tsuyu was left disappointed that she couldn't join them. I know that you want to join them, but even though they're smugglers, we have to be careful. So follow the captain's orders. Let's support them together. Sirius said to comfort Froppy. I don't like it. 0401 said as he looked out the window. I've got a bad feeling about this. The ships soon found themselves moored together as Selkie and 2 of his crew began the inspection. Soon enough, the Oki mariner lost communication with them. Captain, please respond. It's no good. Radio can't get anything. I'll go and dash. Hold on, Sirius said as she began to pay attention. With her quirk, good ear, she could hear Selkie's high-frequency codes and interpreted a message. Stowaways. Different boat. We're fine. Find them. Sirius soon gave the order for them to start the ship and head for shore. Although Froppy asked about saving the captain, Sirius reiterated the importance of following the captain's orders and trusting that he made the right decision. But she's right, Froppy. It's just like with us clones whenever we follow VOD's orders. We trust in him that whatever he has us do is for the best. Froppy nodded and decided to put her faith in her captain as well. They quickly found the stowaway's boat in a cove, and finding a sole lookout were able to quickly capture and interrogate her. There's one in the cabin, Sirius said after Froppy got the 4 of them down to the boat. We've got this. Right, I'll take him all. My eyes. Mick yelled out as black ink covered his face, and a large tentacle smashed him into the cliff. Froppy was frozen in shock and was pushed out of the way by Sirius, who was caught up in another tentacle. 0401 opened fire but was swiped by another tentacle into the water, and the entire cabin exploded as an octopus-like villain emerged. Gotcha. Villain. I thought that I'd gotten clean away, but it looks like I have stowaways of my own now. Tsuyu riveted apprehensively as the villain then began to mock the fact that they were the only ones left. Sirius tried to strike him with a baton, but it was knocked out of the way, and the villain began to squeeze her. Froppy tried to move, but the villain stopped her, saying that he would only release her once he was free of the Coast Guard. Sirius radio started up, relaying how Selkie was already on his way, and the villain threatened her to say that everything was fine in exchange for Sirius' life. Tsuyu desperately looked into Sirius' eyes, and a silent conversation was shared between them. What's really important for a hero? The stowaways are at Double Rock. 2. The villain roared in agony as a blaster bolt shot through his arm, forcing it to let Sirius go. He was then tackled by the clone who had managed to climb up the bow of the boat. Move, Froppy. A tentacle tried to strike at Froppy as the villain wrestled against the clone, the boat being crushed by its force. The clone was then forcefully thrown against the cliff face, his armor cracking against the villain's strength. Ack! I've heard about you clones, I wonder. If I crack your skull right now, will you disappear? Or will your body be left behind? No, you don't. Tsuyu yelled as she planted both her feet into the villain's head, knocking him away from the clone. You damn brat. All you had to do was say that you lost the stowaways. Now I'll kill you both. He yelled before the water erupted and 2 bodies were flung at him. Seeing his subordinates fall back into the water, he was surprised to see Selkie follow soon after. Captain, good work. I've got him now. Selkie turned back but was blinded by the villain's ink, which proved to provide no disadvantage, however, as Selkie easily used his echolocation to fight back. The villain soon found himself on the back foot and back on the boat. Launching out a final attack, he was knocked off balance by Sirius grabbing his foot and was left open for the utterly brutal kick delivered by Selkie. Tsuyu was in awe at the water displaced by the captain's kick. The captain's so cool. Froppy. Sirius. Bringing the clone back to the boat, Sirius and Froppy checked each other, glad to see the other safe. Selkie popped his head out of the water to congratulate them for their hard work, and the 2 girls thanked him. Thank you, Selkie said with another cute pose. Sirius merely laid back down, The moment ruined for her as the clone began to laugh uproariously. Serious, I'm glad that I took this internship. What's really important for a hero? I think I understand that a little better now. Sirius sighed in exhaustion.
I'm glad.
As dawn broke over the ocean, the villains were arrested by the Coast Guard and Selkie was giving his final report of the mission. By the way, Selkie, Tsuyu heard from the side. When did you get a new sidekick? Ribbit. She's a UA student here on an internship. Is that right? Looks like we made you go through something pretty scary. Sorry about that. The officer said. Hey, don't go treating her like a kid now. As far as I'm concerned, she's already well on her way to becoming an excellent hero. Selkie praised. Well then, I look forward to working with you officially in the future. The officer said as he shook Froppy's hand. Ribbit. Next to her, 0401 suddenly had an appetite for calamari. Are you all right? Tsuyu asked him. At the moment, he was only in half his armor, his upper body still covered in the black undersuit. Yeah, I'm all right after all. You saved my life. It's what heroes do. You got that right, by the way. Call me Monk, he said as he shook her hand as well. Nice name. What made you decide that? Honestly, it just came to mind. That's so cool. Ashido yelled in excitement. It wasn't anything much. Tsuyu replied as Monk began to shake his head. Well, you saved my life. As far as I or any of the VODE are concerned, you're one of us, he said with a thumbs up before heading out. Oh, that's right. You did your internship with Fordo, right, Jiru? Nah, I was with Cut Up, but Death Arms was really cool, but we only did reconnaissance for a hostage situation. Kyoka's internship. Kyoka and Cut Up knelt next to a wall, the former with her jacks in it, listening for those on the other side and the latter with a twin pair of pistols in hand. Death Arms alongside one of his sidekicks were at the ready, and once she confirmed that there were only 2 hostages, were able to breach and clear the area. 2 men in suits ran out, quickly escorted by Cut Up and Kyoka as Death Arms dealt with the criminals. Later, when Death Arms approached them, he praised their work. Good job, Beslar, Cut Up. That was some good work out of the both of you. Send my best to 2010, all right? Right. Bakugo seethed as they continued to talk about their internships. It seemed that his was the only one that was a complete waste of time. Bakugo's internship. It is possible that criminal activity will rise after Hosu's events. Villains have a tendency to become inspired when one of their own makes a big enough push. Best Jeanist explained while Bakugo and the clone followed him. Even though this is just a patrol, don't let your guard down. Right? Yes, sir. This is sudden, but here's a question. Jeanist began. Patrols are meant to deter villains from committing crimes, but they also have a secondary effect. What is it? If we see villains, we beat them up right away. The clone helmet palmed.
No.
A group of schoolgirls then excitedly pointed at Best Jeanist and praised him. He waved back at them much to their excitement. The answer is, to show people who we are. To give the public peace of mind.
Que?
It builds trust between those who protect and those who are being protected. Best Jeanist continued, uncaring of Bakugo's derision. What is this, a courtesy visit? Bakugo asked in annoyance before his attention was caught by a group of kids. Oh, I've seen him on TV before. Bakugo took a deep breath in annoyance. The sports festival again? He was caught by a villain and looked like he was about to cry, right? Bakugo's anger increased so much that his hairstyle exploded, and he reared back on them. What did you say? He roared in their faces. They immediately began to cry. Did you already forget what I taught you? Best Jeanist asked. I don't think he even listened in the first place, sir. The clone snarked. Deal with them properly. Bakugo groaned in defeat as he approached them. All right already, he replied before addressing the kids. You know, I wasn't caught by the villain back then. I was thinking about how to defeat him. It wasn't that I lost. I'm the man who'll become the #1 hero. There's no reason for kids like you to worry about me. They cried even louder. He's too proud. Best Jeanist thought as he hid his eyes behind his bangs in embarrassment. It's fine for those strong feelings to be aimed at becoming a hero, but if that's no longer the case now, what shall I do with you? The clone groaned and shook his head before walking past Bakugo and helping the kids calm down. Bakugo could only stay standing in disbelief. Ooh, Yamamo. What about you? How did your internship go? It was interesting, I guess you could say. Yaoyorozu sighed out as her forehead hit the desk, all sense of decorum leaving her. The clone next to her patted her shoulder in comfort while slightly chuckling. Yaoyorozu's internship. Uwabami, can I have your autograph? Can I take your picture? Look this way, please. Uwabami turned around to face both Kendo and Yaoyorozu, both of them staring at the crowd with disappointment. When you work diligently like this, you can eventually make big blossoms bloom. It's like when an Inca singer goes on provisional tours, she said before turning back to the crowd. Doesn't work diligently, Yaoyorozu began, means something different? Kendo finished. 3636 merely shook his head. He'd definitely report this to Nizu with a recommendation that Uwabami not be allowed any internships in the future. At least I was able to spar with 3636. You should get yourself a name soon, you know? She told the clone that was leaning against the wall next to her. Yeah, one day. Still haven't found something I like yet. He shrugged. But yeah, the internship wasn't really all that good. I get you, Yaoyorozu, Kirishima said as he walked up to her. Fourth kind had us do mostly community service. Kirishima's internship. Contributing to the community is also an essential part of being a hero, Fourth kind said as he wore a volunteer vest and hat. He, alongside Kirishima, Tetsu, and a clone were picking up trash in a park. Don't drag your feet doing it. Do you understand? Yes, Mr. Fourth Kind. The three replied half-heartedly. I can't hear you. Yes, Mr. Fourth Kind. They said with much more vigor. I mean, I wish that we'd seen more action, but I totally understand the whole thing about serving the community and establishing a foundation for personal heroism and all that, but still, hey, what about you, Uraraka? Kirishima turned to Ochako, who was miming some moves that she'd learned. Looks like Ochako's awakened, Tsuyu said jokingly, although it was hard to tell with her bluntness. Ochako's internship. After hitting the mat from knife training for about the 20th time, Ochako wearily got up and tried again, and again, and again. She started to giggle a bit, and that worried the clones that were next to her. Yeah, maybe this wasn't the best idea. Again. Good to see you on your feet again, Uravity. That's a huge change for just a week. Kaminari commented while Mineta shook his head. No, change isn't what happened here, Kaminari. In reality, women are all demons, hiding their true personalities. He whispered, shivering and biting his fingernail. What did you see at MT Lady's place? The clone that was with him merely chuckled, and Mineta angrily called him out for mocking him when all he had to do was learn about insurance. Oh, Ida, I heard that you were in Hosu, right? I heard that you got injured pretty badly, Ashido said as she jumped to her next target. Tenya paused as he looked at his classmates, all of them eager to hear about Hosu. Well, yes, I did receive injuries. However, I was quickly saved by Izuku and patched up by some clones before I was properly treated. I didn't really see much of anything else, however, although Waxer and Boyle were rightfully angry at me for leaving them behind. Oh, how could I have forgotten, dude? That fight was so sick, Kaminari said as he began to mimic Izuku's poses. Kyoka laughed at him. Hey, but seriously, I didn't know that Midoriya knew how to use a sword. Not only that, but one of the 7 ancient arts, Tokoyami said with awe in his voice. Could it be possible that he could teach me? Thoughts of being a Dark Avenger, patrolling the streets with his shadowy blade began to fill his mind. I'll finally have a use for that sword. You're being weird, Fumi, Dark Shadow said before Tokoyami tried to stuff him back. Dude, he's been trending all over. And did you hear about last night? Sato asked from the side. Yeah, I heard that some villains attacked him after he got discharged, and he had to escape with a civilian that got caught up in the crossfire. Ojiro commented as he headed over to them. I hope that he doesn't get in trouble, though. I saw that the HPSC wanted to apply more accountability, whatever that means, Ochako said as they began to sit down. I'm sure that our instructors have a plan in mind to help our friend, Ochako. Tenya said as he held her shoulder. I do wonder where he is, though. Good morning, everybody, Izuku said as he walked in. Izuku. Midoriya. Midori. Izuku stepped back as his friends and classmates began to crowd him. Bro, that was the manliest thing ever. You took down the hero killer. With his own sword. Kirishima excitedly exclaimed as the others began to ask him questions. Dude, you gotta tell us more. You're famous now, man. Mandalore has made his debut. Although I'm surprised the news didn't know your hero name. Alright. I'm sure that Izuku would like to tell us more, but class is about to begin and you're crowding him. Step back a bit, Tenya said as he T-posed and pushed his classmates back. Thanks, Tenya. Geez, Midoriya, I can't even imagine somebody that's scary being in the USJ, and you faced him one-on-one. Ojiro commented as his tail flicked nervously. Plus, I heard that he was connected to the League of Villains. Yeah, he's scary. But have you seen the video, Ojiro? Kaminari asked him. The hero killer one? Who hasn't? He's super tenacious. Seeing him shout like that was chilling. Kinda cool, honestly. Kaminari. Izuku scolded him. Oops, sorry, Ida. No, it's fine. It's true that he was tenacious. Watching Izuku's fight showed that much, and I can understand how people could think that he's cool, Tenya said as he held a hand to his side. But he chose purging as the execution of his beliefs. No matter his ideals, that part is definitely wrong. That's why, to prevent anybody from becoming like me, I will once again walk on the path to becoming a hero. I'm glad to hear that, Tenya, Izuku said as he took his seat. Sorry again, but now that you remind me, Midoriya, that video, Stain called you worthy alongside All Might to kill him? Do you know what that was about? The classroom was silent, all of them paying attention to Izuku, even Bakugo, as angry as he was for Deku to be compared to All Might, paid attention. Let's just say that Izuku began as he considered Stain's words during their fight. Tell me, Mandalore, why do you protect these fakes? I can see it within you, the spark of a true hero. But the rest of these fakes are corrupted, tainting society. What drives you? We exchanged some words during our fight. Izuku finished as the bell rang and class began. Field Gamma. All right, I am here, All Might said as they stood in front of another training ground. This time an industrial complex filled with pipes, tanks, and buildings. Let's start the day off with some good old-fashioned basic training. It's great to see you all again. Today's basic training, since you've all returned from your hero internships, we'll have some fun with a rescue training race. Tenya gulped and raised his hand, hesitant to ask his question. Since we're doing rescue training, shouldn't we go to the USJ? The atmosphere became slightly tense as the students remembered the events that occurred there. A few, not so slyly, looked at Izuku, who remained concentrated with the task at hand. If anybody noticed his fist tighten just the slightest bit more, well, nobody commented. That place is reserved for disasters. Do you remember what I said? That's right, race. With a flourish of his arm, he presented the training ground behind him. This here is Field Gamma, a very dense area filled with factories laid out like a labyrinth. You'll break up into 4 5-person groups and go through the training one group at a time. I'll be sending out a distress signal from somewhere inside. You'll start off at different spots and will have to race your way to me. All Might then started shaking his finger. Of course, you'll have to keep collateral damage to a minimum, he said while coincidentally pointing at Bakugo. Don't point at me. All right, first group, get in place. Izuku found himself at the outskirts of the field. His opponents were Tenya, Shiro, Ojiro, and Ishido. He closed his eyes and began to meditate in an effort to continue contact with Nana and the other users. His connection with his inner world was improving, and he hoped that one day he would be able to speak with them constantly. After all, what child wouldn't like to hear the advice of his beer? A soft feeling of warmth and love filled his chest, and he knew that Nana was listening, ready to show them what's what. Do it. Hey, Ida hasn't recovered fully, right? Why doesn't he just watch? Kaminari asked with some admiration. I don't think that he's the type, Sato replied as he scratched his chin. This group has everybody in the class with good mobility. Perhaps Izuku and Tenya are at a slight disadvantage. They're both fast, but they tend to be more linear. Momo commented as she looked at the screen. Even at the sports festival, the obstacles were all stacked in a straight line. And he tends to get hurt if he pushes himself, like during his fight with Todoroki. He blurred past him, but it caused a lot of strain to his body. Kyoka recalled. Who do you think will win? Kirishima asked. I think Ciro'll get first. Yeah, but Ojiro's there too. Kaminari replied. I think it'll be Ishido. She's super athletic. Mineta commented. Deku will be last. As much as he's injured, Tenya has got a good chance. Same as Izuku. Ochako said as Tsuyu riveted in agreement. Okay, here we go, start. All Might called out as he pressed a button. Ciro immediately pressed his advantage, using his tape to swing through the piping. Ishido skated along with acid on her feet. Ojiro gained height by using his tail as a spring while Tenya sped through the alleys. See, look. Kirishima called out as they saw Ciro in first place. In a place like this, it's only natural to go high. That means that Ciro's got an advantage since he's good in the air. Shoji commented, but still kept his eye out. Ciro was having too much fun swinging through the field. Hey, isn't this place a little too perfect for me? A white blur shut him up. What the dash? Izuku sped through the piping, bouncing off surfaces like a pinball while keeping his focus. Heh, I'm so glad I learned this from you, Gran Torino. Various students were surprised by Izuku's change in style. It seemed that the internship had done wonders for him. Toshinori had to fight to not shake in his boots. Izuku's movements were extremely familiar, and he had to remind himself that he wasn't the same kid back at UA that Torino would pummel into a pulp. I'm so proud, Izuku. But why, oh why, did you have to emulate him? Whoa, Izuku's going so fast. And it looks like he's not hurting himself. He must have improved his control by a lot. Izuku was doing a combination of bounces, hops, and jumps, and yes, there was a difference according to Torino. If he had the open space, he would leap up into the air. If he by chance found himself in an alley, he would pinball through them to gain linear distance. Although the style was different, some moves were quite similar to another. Those are some of my moves. Bakugo thought to himself as rage began to consume him. I wasted my time at that useless internship and again. It's happening again. Izuku leapt through the air as One for All surged through him, its embrace encouraging him as he made his way to the tower. He took a large leap, aiming to land on a large pipe. Then a small headache. Not there. Crap. Izuku swiftly put his hands behind him and charged up to 20%, flicking his fingers. It gave him some more distance and helped him land on flatter and thus more stable terrain. With a final leap, Izuku made it to his beer. All Might's smile of pride filled Izuku with joy, and he smiled right back. Finish. Thank you and congrats, Toshinori said as he held out a banner that said, Thanks for saving me. I see that I have a lot to learn left when it comes to terrain with unstable footing, had I not been warned. Thank you, whoever you are. Hikage. Izuku blinked in surprise before smiling. Thank you, Hikage. Eventually the other students arrived, and All Might briefed them. Well done all of you. Although young Midoriya came first, all of you have improved markedly with using your quirks. Keep going like this and start preparing for your final exam. Yes, sir. Group 1, you can leave the field. Next group, get ready. As the others left, All Might called for Izuku to stay behind. You surprised me. I couldn't believe my eyes. Come find me after class. It's time you know everything about me and One for All. All Might said as he readied the next group. Yeah, I've got some things to talk about too, Izuku said as he made his way down to his friends. Izuku, that was awesome. You were like whoosh and flum and dash. Ochako excitedly acted out her friend's actions as Izuku chuckled. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Ochako. Oh, I almost forgot, she said as she approached him. Clunk. HRK. That's a greeting between the VOD, right? I wanted to join in. I hope I'm not overstepping, Ochako said while shyly rubbing the back of her neck. Not at all. Izuku squeaked before clearing his throat. I mean, it's fine, Ochako. No problem at all. Great. Wish me luck. she said as she headed off to her starting point. Good luck, he said, voice slightly cracking before he cleared his throat again. He took a deep breath and tried to calm the flush in his cheeks, grateful that he hadn't taken off the helmet yet. I'm gonna kill those clones. Changing rooms. That class was surprisingly hard. What did you expect? It's UA. I'm so glad I changed my armor. That metal under that sun would have left me sweating like unpork, Yuga said as he took off his plates. Oh right, how did Fordo react to that? He was very shocked but pleased. Although now he holds it over me. Yuga grumbled. At least I gotta keep my cape. I need to work on my mobility. Kirishima criticized himself as he put one of his gears into his locker. You should compensate for it by gathering information. Know the battlefield. Tokoyami advised as he put on his tie. Heh, that'll put me behind everybody, Kaminari said jokingly as he took off his costume. I'm jealous of guys like you and Shiro. Izuku remained pensive for what was to come but was distracted by Mineta calling him. Hey Midoriya, look what I found. He eagerly pointed at a hole in the wall that was revealed by the corner of a poster falling off. It's a straight-up Shawshank, probably thanks to the efforts of our upperclassmen. After all, next door is the girls' locker room. Mineta, don't you dare. Peeping is definitely a criminal act. Tenya yelled as he chopped the air only to grimace as his stomach twinged. My little Mineta is already a criminal act. He then began to spout off the various body parts that he wanted to see as he got closer to the hole. A hand suddenly slammed over the hole, cracking the wall and scaring Mineta so that he turned pale as a sheet. Mineta shakily looked from the hand and turned his head upwards, and saw Izuku's face practically wreathed in shadow as his quirk sparked over his head, the X-shaped scar on his face glowing red while his eyes shined brightly in righteous anger. Now, Mineta, you weren't about to peek at people that I consider good friends of mine, especially classmates that we should treat with respect now, were you? Izuku asked as the aura around him grew heavy.
No.
Mineta stuttered, swearing that he could see phantom-like, glowing eyes appearing behind him. Good, Izuku said as he then removed his hand from the wall, a few drops of blood coming out of it as the aura suddenly receded. Let's cover this up then, he said as he finished dressing up and headed out. Bro, forget Stain being scary. Ain't no way I want to face Midoriya when he's like that.
¿Qué?
Walking out the dressing rooms, he was met by a flustered Kyoka who had quickly changed and apologized for accidentally stabbing his hand with her ear jack. No worries, I didn't even feel it that much, he said before walking off to meet Toshinori. Kyoka knew that she should feel slightly insulted. After all, she put a good amount of power into the jack in the hopes of punishing Mineta, but she was more in awe of the fact that Izuku took her attack like a champ. Say what you will about him, he certainly has a high pain tolerance. Izuku and Toshinori sat across from each other, drinking some tea. So, you've been in continued contact with Nana and another of the previous wielders? Yes, Hikage helped me during my fight with Stain. He, partially, controlled my body? I guess you could say that he guided my movements and also provided me with warnings. Whenever danger is apparent, I get these slight headaches. Interesting. And, when I was running from the Yakuza, when I leapt up to the highway, Nana said for Met to concentrate on her and my fall was slower as if I was floating. Toshinori whispered, suddenly appearing decades older. You were floating. I saw the footage. The others were confused about it, but I'd recognize my master's quirk anywhere. That was her quirk? Yes, Toshinori said as his eyes were lost in memories for a few moments before he snapped himself out of it. Anyway, I know that you've been through a lot these last few days. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there for you. You don't have to worry about that, Beer. So, what did you want to tell me? I heard. All Might licked his finger. That the hero killer got a lick of your blood. Yeah. His quirk let him paralyze people by ingesting it. What about it? Izuku asked. Do you remember what I said when I gave you my power? Eat this, Izuku said with a perfect imitation of All Might. No, not that part. Toshinori groaned. How do you even do that? Years of practice. It's surprisingly well done, anyway. I said that in order to inherit my power, you needed my DNA dash. Don't tell me the hero killer has one for all now? Izuku yelled in shock. What?
No.
I thought you were worried about that, so I never mind. Point is one for all can't be transferred to anybody unless the bearer wills it. It can't be stolen by force. Toshinori explained as Izuku suddenly became pensive. Then, does that mean that it can be forcibly passed on? Izuku asked. Toshinori slowly nodded. Yes, it can. That may very well be the case with some of the earlier wielders. I see. It's a special quirk, and it has a special history as well. In order to understand its history, however, we must go back to the dawn of quirks. To be simple, One for All was derived from a quirk that originated from that time, a quirk known as All for One. He began. It was a quirk that could steal other quirks and make them the holders, and one that could give those quirks to others. All for one. All the power for one person. Indeed. You see, back then, society was thrust into chaos by the emergence of quirks. The very concept of normalcy was thrown into ruin. Laws lost their meaning, governments crumbled, everything decayed. If superpowers had never appeared, humanity would be taking interstellar holidays by now. Izuku said, remembering the quote from a history textbook. Right. During that time, someone began to unify the people. You might have heard of him. He would steal quirks and amass overwhelming power, eventually stretching his influence everywhere. He was cold, calculating, playing with people and committing evil acts to his heart's content. Toshinori continued, his tone becoming more reserved. It worried Izuku. Soon enough, he ruled over Japan, having amassed as many followers as he did quirks. I've seen rumors about this online, Izuku said as he clutched his knee. But there's never been any mention of this in any textbook or anything, because they'd rather forget that such a figure existed. It's a dark part of our history, not one that many wish to remember or even acknowledge. All right, Izuku said as he nodded along. So how does this lead back to One for All? All for One could give quirks to others, right? He would make others trust or surrender to him by doing so. But for many that were given, they couldn't handle the strain and became mindless dolls, like the Nomus. Izuku's eyes widened as he recalled the creatures that his brothers and him had faced already, both the USJ and the ones from Hosu. On the other hand, some quirks would mix or change as they were passed on. All for One had a younger brother, a quirkless one who was small and sickly, but with a strong sense of justice. He resisted him, pained by the elder's deeds. Whether out of pity or in hopes of making him submit, All for One forced a quirk that could stockpile power onto him. Then that means that, yes, as it turned out, the younger brother did have a quirk after all, a useless one that could pass on quirks. All Might then extended his arms to emphasize his point. The quirk that could stockpile power merged with the quirk to pass on other quirks, and so One for All was born. Izuku took a deep breath at the revelation and folded his hands under his chin. Ironic, isn't it? Toshinori rhetorically asked. That justice always comes from evil. Izuku stayed silent for a moment as he contemplated everything that he'd been told. This guy, he's from 200 years ago, but you're talking about him now? Toshinori bowed his head. He's not dead, is he? Toshinori took a shaky breath and shook his head. I fear not. He may very well have stolen a quirk to stop aging, or something along those lines. The symbol of evil was pretty much immortal, and with society as broken as it was back then, the youngest was too weak, so he decided to entrust the future to the next generation. He believed that if he couldn't win then he could slowly cultivate the power, and one day it would stop his older brother. One by one, 7 wielders rose and fell against him, until it was finally my turn, and I defeated him. Toshinori said with triumph before his expression fell. Or at least, I thought I did. He said as he clenched his jaw in anger. That was the fight that left you scarred, right? Indeed, as I told you before, I let my hatred blind me, and he tore out my side. Izuku gulped as he tried to imagine how that fight went. It still escaped him. He survived, even after I smashed his skull in. But now he's back as the brain behind the League of Villains, of that I have no doubt. Tashinori then stood up and went to the window, looking out toward the calm city bathed in the sunset. One for all is a power inherited to defeat all for one, so to speak. So that means, yes, you may have to face this great evil one day. I know it's a harsh burden, but dash, I'll do my best, Izuku said as he hugged Tashinori from behind. I trust you, Beer. That's why I'll do anything that you ask me to. As long as I have my brothers, as long as I have you with me, I can do anything. I know it. Tashinori held on to Izuku's hands, a part of him trembling. Tell him, All Might. Tell him the truth. Tashinori's jaw shook as he tried to force himself to say the words. I thank you, my boy, Tashinori said as he turned and hugged him back. Later, as he saw Izuku make his way to the infirmary to check up on the girl he saved, Tashinori could only feel regret. It won't be like that, my son. By that time, I may not be able to be by your side anymore. UA Infirmary. Izuku was glad that he'd been there when Eri had first woken up. It had been before class, and he'd been able to explain to her the concept of the VOD. His brothers had been having a good time playing with her throughout the day, although they all reported that none of them had been able to make her smile. Who knows how long she was with those criminal scum? Izuku thought as he recalled what Detective Tsukachi had said about her, how she had no records in any system. Nizu had been glad to take her in as a UA ward. Apparently there was a precedent. Still, though, he hoped to one day be able to help her smile. Knocking on the door, he opened and saw Eri drawing idly on some paper, a clone next to her.
Hello, Eri.
She looked at him and perked up a bit, glad to see her savior. Hello, Mr. Izuku. How was your day? He asked as he sat down next to her, the clone giving a jaunty salute before heading out. Good. I did some drawings, she said as she held a paper up for him. Oh, and what did you draw? I drew you, she said as Izuku looked at the paper. It was obviously a childish drawing, but Izuku couldn't help but smile as he looked at it. It was him in his hero costume. The VOD must have shown her a picture, and there was a mini-her next to him too. It's a very nice drawing. I love it, he said as he gave her a gentle hug. Thank you, she stuttered as she leaned into his embrace. They spent the next couple of hours talking about their day and working on drawings together. Another knock on the door alerted him to Recovery Girl arriving, who relayed him some news while giving Eri some medicine in cups which she reluctantly took. Again, it was thanks to the VOD that she was even taking any medicine at all. We tried to get her to take a nap, but anytime she tried to fall asleep she's plagued by nightmares. It worries me. She's also terribly scared of needles, the poor dearie. Fortunately, your brothers have been most helpful, especially that Metaclone Kicks, she said as she quickly checked Eri's vitals, the girl burying herself into Izuku's side. It's too soon to tell, but hopefully with a good, constant routine she should improve. I'm glad to hear that. Hopefully we can help her recover, Izuku replied. They discussed some of the treatments as Recovery Girl finished her checkup. After some time, he turned to the girl still huddled in his side. Oh, he said as he saw her fast asleep. Looks like she's doing fine with you by her side. Would you mind staying the night? I can alert your mother, Recovery Girl asked. I would stay every night if it meant helping her, Izuku said as he picked her up and sat on the bed. Doing his best not to shuffle her, he took off his blazer and tie and kicked off his shoes. Lying down on the bed, Eri instinctively cuddled into his side and gave a sigh of relief. Izuku in turn held her tightly and even kissed the top of her head before leaning his head on the pillow. Heh. Izuku blushed as he looked at Recovery Girl, who was looking at him with a sly smirk. What? Nothing, boy, she said as she considered some things before addressing him again. You're a fine man, Midoriya, and you'll be a great hero. Tashinori chose the right one, of that I have no doubt. Thanks, RG. Rest up, Midoriya, she said as she turned off the lights. You have a big day tomorrow, what with your press conference and all. Closing the door, she left them alone. Press conference? Izuku asked in confusion, but although he wanted more answers, he couldn't exactly get them now. Resigning himself to his current situation, he decided to simply do the only thing he could. Sleep. Author. Protect the unicorn child. Let me tell you guys, I found this tip that helped me write more, and it annoys me that it works. Use Comic Sans. And now for Omax. If you've seen my Darth Kyofu story, then you'll notice that I'll start putting villain O's there, and I'll focus on hero O's here from now on. Seems fitting to me.
Megatronus O, counterpart tout Megatron O.
Izuku glared as he faced the support course girl, the latter having created some sort of robotic, insect-like beast. His scarred visage made him all the more intimidating, and the girl was somewhat apprehensive of him, although she hid it behind her showmanship. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me, Hatsum May, CEO of Hatsum Industries, to introduce my newest baby, the insect icon. The thing roared at him. A poor attempt at intimidation. He'd been fortunate. Although he was quirkless, Yue had allowed him his sword to at least level the playing field, so to speak. Besides, he'd long learned that quirks were ultimately pointless in the long run. After all, many with quirks didn't last against the modifications done to his body. The two charged at each other and struck. The insect icon was brutal, but that was it. It lacked true intelligence, merely an automaton. Yet as Izuku was flung around the arena, the insect icon transformed into a beetle and flew him into the sky, even drawing blood, much to his ire. Well, quite simply, he had enough. The beast charged at him, and Izuku merely batted it away with a roar. Hatsum looked at him in surprise, and he sneered at her. You and your beast would do well to remember. I am Megatronus. I hone my skills in the pits of Kaon, he said as he readied his sword. Around the arena, the crowd murmured. Kaon? The illegal human experimentation/fighting ring? He's a survivor? Wait, that's Megatronus? The undefeated champion of Kaon? I thought he was dead. He's trying to be a hero? The two warriors faced each other, blade against claw, brutal strikes that drew blood and oil. Megatronus finally managed to push the creature back and grabbed some of its limbs, pulling them back. Raising his foot, he kicked the insect icon and ripped the limbs off. Raising his sword, he charged and with a single swipe, the insecticon's head was cut off. Raising his hands to the roaring crowd, he cried out his victory. Let that be a warning for anybody who dares cross a gladiator of Kaon.
Another Zanpakuto.
Shigaraki was absolutely frustrated. This kid was proving to be an oddball, barely paying attention to him and Nomu as if he didn't have any care in the world. Well, he'd kill him one way or another. And what was with that gaudy robe? Yar, I guess you finally get what you wanted, Villain-san, Izuku said as he lazily popped his neck. It infuriated him. So what exactly are you gonna do? Little hero. No patience at all. Oh well. To be honest, I was hoping to play a little game. Huh. Then an unforeseen pressure exerted itself on him, almost making him bite his tongue as Izuku took out his two swords. Flower Wind Rage and Flower God Roar, Heavenly Wind Rage and Heavenly Demon Sneer, Kaiten Kayakatsu. The two swords then changed from traditional Japanese swords to something similar to Chinese scimitars. Now then, let's start with something simple. Have you ever played Iruni? Author. Thank you all for your support. We've finally hit over 1,000 followers, almost 1,000 favorites, and over 100K views. Thank you for everything. Chapter 18. Conference. Author. Everybody, I'm so glad to be able to do this for you all. You all inspire me to keep on going even when I don't want to. We've hit over 1K favorites and follows, each and over 125K views. As promised, these are the excerpts from the last two chapters added to this one. 9/11 Memorial. Look, I know I'm a bit late to this, but after realizing that I posted yesterday and how I forgot to mention this, I'm posting this short memorial to 9/11. Ironic since I'm in the Navy, huh? Regardless of anybody's personal views on the events surrounding that day, let us not forget the lives that were lost and how that's affected our lives today. Like Yoda says, fear leads to anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. And unfortunately, there's a lot of suffering in this world. Maybe for a lot of us. For many of you that are reading this, we're too young to even remember what happened. I certainly was. But after 21 years, maybe we can take the time to look on ourselves and be a little bit better, more tolerant, more understanding. I'll move this once I post the next chapter, but I really felt that I needed to get this out. Take it easy, everybody. Until next time. Happy birthday, Legion. Hello everybody. I know that this isn't a chapter, but I needed to get this out. As it turns out, Legion is now just a few weeks over a year old, and I didn't even notice. I want to thank everybody for their continued support throughout this year. I'm already working on the next chapter for Legion, so bear with me. But again, I want to thank you all. We've hit so many milestones, and hopefully we can continue to hit more. TBH, I completely forgot about the birthday thing, but I just wanted to put this out because I enjoy writing and I enjoy updating Legion for all of you. Now, onto the story. Legion. Conference. No gift is more precious than trust. Izuku woke up content. He looked to his side and saw that Eri was still at his side, the small girl breathing calmly as she rested her head against his chest. Reminds me of when Mom used to hold me after I had nightmares as a kid, before Django came by. Izuku's attention was grabbed by Recovery Girl, who walked in with some food. Oh good, you're awake. I was wondering when you'd finally get up. I called your mother and she came by earlier this morning with fresh clothes. I also got lunch rush to make you and Eri some breakfast. Ah, thanks RG. Izuku said as he sat up as quickly as possible without disturbing Eri. She eventually ended with her head on his lap as he began to eat. Eventually the smell made her stomach rumble, and she groggily opened her eyes to find Izuku looking down on her. Sleep well? It's not a dream? Izuku's heart broke a little as he heard her say that, but simply smiled at her. I'm as real as you are, he said before caressing her head and slightly ruffling her hair. Now, I imagine you're hungry. How about some food, no? Eri slowly nodded and sat up, a variety of wondrous new smells filling her senses. What's all this? Izuku's blood turned cold. What exactly had they done to her? He still kept smiling. Well, we've got some rice, miso soup, and some fish on the more traditional side. Also got some American things too. American? I'll explain later, but we have some eggs, fruit, and even some toast. What would you like to start with? She looked at the tray and spotted something that caught her eye. I'd like the apple, please. She stuttered, and Izuku merely nodded before handing it to her. Taking a quick bite, her eyes lit up and looked at the apple with wonder. It's very sweet. I like it. That's good. Go ahead and keep eating, Izuku said as he began to eat. Throughout their meal, she picked a few other things to eat as well. Surprisingly enough, she didn't mind veggies as most children do, didn't really have an opinion on the rice, fish, or eggs, and absolutely loved apples. He swore to himself that one day he'd get her a candy one. Once they were finished, Recovery Girl gave HRT another checkup, Izuku offering to go first to show that she didn't mean any harm. It helped a lot to keep her calm. Eventually he changed and got ready, and even helped Eri change with a fresh set of clothes and bandages. It was saddening to see how little trust she had for other people, but it seemed that Izuku had managed to gain it completely. Today was fortunately Saturday, which meant that he could spend the day with her, well, mostly. Hey RG, what did you mean by a press conference? Boy, you were caught on live TV defeating a villain and then raced down a highway to rescue a girl while being pursued. What did you think was going to happen? Oh, yes, so, you silly boy. Recovery Girl chuckled and shook her head. Fortunately, Nizu and Midnight will be giving you a crash course in public relations, so you should be fine. Izuku let out a sigh before nodding, at least comforted by the fact that he wouldn't go in blind. That's fine. After all, I spoke at the festival. I can speak during the conference. When is it gonna be? In an hour. It was only due to the fact that Eri was right next to him that he didn't yell. Can you repeat that, please? It's in an hour, she said with a grin. Izuku took a deep breath and counted to 10. Brothers, help me. Now, Chio, I'm sure you're having plenty of fun with the boy, but let's not give him too much agitation, Nizu said as he walked into the room. Izuku noticed Eri hiding behind his leg, but was still peering out at Nizu with some curiosity. Hello there, little one. Am I a dog, a rat, a bear? Who knows? But I am Principal Nizu. It's a pleasure to meet you. He greeted, keeping himself as small and unassuming as possible. Hello. I'm Eri. What's a principal? Oh, that's simple. I'm in charge of a school that teaches heroes. What's a school? The only sign that Nizu had been affected by her words was the slight twitch of his ear, and he looked up at Izuku, who sadly nodded at him. A school is a place of learning. It's a place where we can grow and expand our minds and ourselves. If you'd like, I can tell you more. We can even have young Midoriya here with you. Nizu said with some cheer, already making plans in his mind to utterly decimate whoever had Eri before. Midoriya? That's my last name, Eri. Izuku Midoriya. Oh, I thought it was VOD. Ah, VOD is actually a word in Mandoe. It's another language dash. Now officially recognized. Nizu interjected with gusto. Yep, it means brother. Like I told you, we're all brothers. Oh, see can you? She began to mumble something that he couldn't quite hear, and he knelt down to her level. I'm sorry, Eri. I couldn't quite hear that. Can you say that again, please? Izuku softly asked as he grabbed her small hands. She stared for a few moments at the scars that crisscrossed them, a dark red against his light skin. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but instead repeated her earlier question. Can you teach me? She asked, and Izuku's heart filled with warmth as he smiled gently at her. Of course, I'd love to. Nizu and Chio both gave each other looks, the former quite surprised at how quickly they'd become attached to each other. Izuku then turned to Nizu and stood back up, continuing to hold on to Eri's hand. So, Principal Nizu, what can I expect? Fortunately, you have far more than an hour. While we wish to push the conference back a bit more, this was unfortunately one of the few concessions I had to make to the HPSC. It'll be today during lunchtime. That means that a lot of people will be seeing it live during their lunches, right? Correct, and it goes without saying that it'll be on repeat for the next few days. Izuku took another deep breath and gave a slightly annoyed glance at RG, who merely smirked at him. All right, what do we have to do? Well, unfortunately public relations isn't my strong suit. One of the few downsides of being a quirked animal, but fortunately Midnight has graciously volunteered herself. Nizu said as he motioned for Izuku to follow him. Izuku moved forward, Eri following behind with RG's approval so that she could walk around and see some sun. It was early morning and it was Saturday, so that meant that there weren't any students and clone activity was actually quite low since interior patrols were limited during the weekends. Eri trailed along his side, her eyes full of wonder at seeing how big the school was. It's empty. Well, today's Saturday, so most everybody's home. During the week, it's a lot busier. Oh, Principal Nizu, you said that Midnight would be doing my public relations training. Is she a dash? You have no need to fear, young Midoriya. Midnight will behave herself. I've already briefed the staff about our new ward, and besides, Bly has been most helpful in keeping her in line. Which reminds me, you should really see her recent interview with her and MT Lady. Bly was most upset with both of them. It was actually really odd and really funny. Granted, it wasn't strange to see clones follow around teachers. Some of them had taken to learning directly under them, with their permission, to better improve the VOD. For example, Pons had taken a liking to Aizawa, and the two could sometimes be seen drinking juice packs and going over assignments. Fordo, when he wasn't training with Yuga and the others, could be found many times with Hound Dog, the latter helping him process the events of the USJ and the life he'd been forced to take. Cody served as Marshal Commander of the VOD, so he served as the main liaison between them and Nizu. Nizu would admit to himself that he enjoyed Cody's fresh perspective, but still missed Django and sometimes had to remind himself that they were different, that Cody was not a replacement, but a new friend. Bly was now constantly at Midnight's side, but not for the unsavory reasons that many of the students thought. Although Midnight would do her best to fluster him by flirts, teasings, compliments, and more, he remained steadfast. Bly had quickly become the envy of almost every male student at UA. However, much to the amusement of present Mike and Eraserhead, he'd taken to disciplining her with a water spray whenever she got out of hand. Hizashi had told Bly to call her a naughty kitty only once within her hearing. He never did so again for fear of her crop. As they reached a classroom, they were greeted by the sight of Bly using said water spray on Midnight, making her sputter and pout at him. One day I will make you break, Bly. Of course, ma'am. Don't call me ma'am. Of course, ma'am.
Bly Isueri.
Ehem. Nizu coughed, catching both of their attention. Bly immediately straightened up and saluted while Midnight tried to do a pose. The effect was slightly muddled by her wet hair. Glad to see you two up to your usual antics. Just doing my duty, sir. Bly nodded as Midnight gave him an annoyed glance. Excuse me, I am not just some duty dash. Squirt. Bly. She said with a deadpan. We have guests, Ms. Midnight, a particularly small one as well. Bly motioned to Airy, who was looking at them with some confusion, but also the barest hint of amusement in her eyes. Right, well. On to work then. Hello there, cutie. I'm Midnight and this is Bly. We're here to help Izuku with a press conference. She said with some cheer. What's a press conference? She asked, and Izuku absent-mindedly thought to himself that he was glad that she was comfortable enough to ask some questions. Well, basically some people are going to ask Izuku some questions. You see, people want to know more about what he's been doing as a hero. Like when he saved me? Exactly. Aren't you a smart girl? Eri hid slightly behind Izuku's leg, but he could tell that she was pleased. They sat down, Eri sitting on Izuku's lap as Midnight began to go over what to expect during a press conference, questions they might ask, traps that they might use, and general actions he should take. Fortunately, they'd have some allied reporters in the midst that would help put him in the bad light, but conversely, it was obvious that the HPSC would have their own plans to try and trick him into a hole. Oh, and you'll also be dressed in your hero costume for this. Fortunately, it's been repaired and polished. Really? Yep, public approval of you is mostly good, but we still want to show you off. So our plan is for you to walk in with your armor, and once you reach the table, you'll take off your helmet and smile. Okay, I can do that, he said nervously. Relax, you'll be fine. Eraser and Nizu will be right beside you, and the VOD will also be around. All right, he said before a thought came to him. There's going to be a lot of people. Who's going to take care of Eri? I don't think she can handle large crowds. Eri slightly tensed at his words, knowing them to be true, but also not wanting to let go of him. Fortunately, your mother has just arrived. I'm sure if we explain the situation, she can watch over little Eri here. Izuku nodded and then knelt and explained that to Eri. My beer, sorry. I mean, my mother is a very kind person. She's why I am who I am today. You'll be safe with her, all right? Eri slightly nodded, and they kept walking along to where his mother was. Upon opening the door, he was quickly fussed over by his mother, who was now scolding him again for getting into a fight with Stain and then immediately getting into a deadly chase. Beer. Please, we have a guest, he said as he finally managed to pry her off him. Izuku sighed before kneeling next to Eri, who had hidden behind his legs again. Beer, this is Eri. She's the girl I saved during the chase. Eri, this is my mother. She's a very kind person, and she'll take care of you during the conference. She gave him a pleading look, but he smiled at her. It's going to be all right. I'm still here. I just want to make sure that you're safe, okay? As soon as the conference is over, I'll be right back by your side, okay? She looked down at her feet and shuffled them a bit before looking back up. Promise? Izuku blinked in surprise before smiling and nodding. I promise. I'll be back soon, he said as he ruffled her hair and pulled her into a hug. Eri slowly hugged him back, basking in his warm touch. Once they let go, he passed her hand onto his beer, the latter who was looking at him with tearful eyes. Beer? You know, I was hoping that you'd at least get a girlfriend before making me a beer. Beer. Press conference. Pass and badge, please. A clone asked, and the reporter quickly complied. A few tried to get comments from them, but they were quick to refuse and simply guided them along. Soon enough, the press conference began as everyone was seated. Nizu was the first to speak as he thanked everyone for their attendance. Now I understand that recent events have caused many questions, and we at UA strive for transparency and accountability, which is why we now have the pleasure to officially introduce to you UA first-year student, Midoriya Izuku. Hearing his cue, Izuku walked through the door and marched with his head raised high until he reached his spot between Nizu and Aizawa. Bowing, he then took off his helmet and smiled at the crowd in front of him. Smile to trick the fear in your heart. Thanks for the advice, Beer. Sitting down, he spoke into the mic and introduced himself. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here with you today, and I hope that I will be able to answer the questions that you have for me. He set the helmet down on the table and was immediately assaulted by flashes and questions. We'll start one by one, Aizawa began and motioned to a reporter. You may begin.
Mato Sato, Mustufazu local.
Mr. Midoriya, you're already a popular topic due to your actions during the sports festival, and with the most recent events, what are your intentions as a hero? Oh, that's a very good question. Truthfully, what I want to be is a hero to the people. I want to inspire hope and let everybody know that they're safe whenever they see my brothers and I. Next question. Aizawa pointed and Izuku grimaced. It looked like they wanted to get the plant out of the way. Nakamura Hitomi, JP News. Mr. Midoriya, considering how you just mentioned the idea of inspiring hope and safety, yet worries have risen due to your lack of experience and damage that has been unintentionally caused by you and your clones. We must also consider the 2 confirmed deaths at the USJ. Is there a question there, or are you bringing up what's already known? Aizawa said, making the reporter grimace. She already partially knew Eraserhead, and he was one of the few heroes whose skin she couldn't get under, especially since he was an underground and thus did not care at all about popularity. The point is that we're wondering how exactly accountability is going to be held, especially since UA is well known for maintaining it. Nizu's fur slightly bristled at the underhanded insult. We understand that Midoriya's decisions could have been completed differently, but we also understand that as a student he is bound to make mistakes. Nevertheless, every action that he has taken has been to save others. Aizawa began, glaring at the woman. As for those deaths, it was already determined that, while unfortunate, were necessary to prevent further loss of life, especially with the circumstances at hand. As for recent events, without Midoriya's actions, UA would have lost a student and families would have lost 2 loved ones. He finished as the woman looked at him with some annoyance. Nizu then took over the conversation. However, we understand that more training and regulation is necessary, which is why he will undergo a revised training schedule to prepare him for this cycle's provisional license examination, therefore, not only being under the guidance of UA and his internships, but also under more extensive regulation from the law. Izuku gulped as more questions arose from the crowd, the flashes from the cameras practically blinding him. Another reporter was chosen. Akamura Kiyo, JP National. Mr. Midoriya, considering everything that's been discussed so far, and the actions that you've taken, special light has come to the fact of you imitating All Might's classic victory pose, and him helping you do so during the sports festival. Tell us, are you intending on replacing All Might? Izuku blinked in surprise before pondering the question for a moment, bowing his head slightly as he spoke into the mic. You know, when I grew up, I imagined myself like all kids do of being a hero like All Might, somebody who saves people with a smile. After going through what I have, I realized something very important. All Might's not going to be around forever. Eventually, one day, we'll have to step up to the plate, and by that I mean all of us, not just heroes. The audience was quiet, taking in his words, only the sounds of cameras clicking being heard. But before we can truly achieve that, I know that villains will also rise up and cause chaos and discord, which is why I want to be more than the symbol of peace. When darkness or terror are around them, I want people to see me and feel hope. He said as he then turned to face the cameras. Hope for a new day, hope that things will get better, that they'll be able to come home safely whenever they see me or one of my brothers. It's why I chose the epithet with my hero name. Ah yes, UA has been tight-lipped about your hero name. Would you care to tell us what it is? I am the rising symbol of hope, Mandalore. So yes, I want the world to know that no matter what comes our way, I am here. And the crowd roared. Izuku slightly leaned back from the flurry of questions that were being flung at him. Across Japan in another city, Sir Night-Eye narrowed his eyes in disapproval. While he could see the tactical advantages of a clone army, he still felt that the boy wasn't worthy enough of one for all. Not like Mirio, who surely was more qualified to become the next symbol of peace. Hope, humph. While he could understand the necessity of hope, only someone who didn't feel capable of living up to All Might's legacy would say that hope would be needed more than peace. Hopefully, as time passed, he would be able to convince Tashinori of his mistake, and the boy as well. Perhaps an internship invitation was in order. Kurogiri was slightly worried about Tamura. The boy had been laughing incessantly for the last few minutes, ever since the Midoriya boy declared himself to be All Might's potential successor. Ha 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 ha, I get it now, Tamura said with an insane grin. It's All Might. It's always been about All Might. He then smiled at the screen, even taking off his hand mask so that he could look at him with both eyes. Mandalore, it's a fitting name for my player too. I really want to see what you can do now, so that in the end I can destroy you completely. Tamura smiled and continued to laugh maniacally. Behind the screen, all for one grinned in delight. He really needed to thank the Ninth personally. After all, if it wasn't for him, Tamura's growth wouldn't have been so exponential, and it looked like he would continue to grow. But there was still one question. Midoriya Izuku. Now why is that name so familiar? Ochako's eyes shined as she stared at the screen in slight awe. Yue had stated earlier that they'd have a conference to discuss important matters, and Aizawa-sensei had recommended that they watch it so that they could learn more about public relations. Apparently it was a course meant for third years, but it would be illogical not to get a head start and at least learn some things. So, her friends decided to group up at one of their houses to watch. Momo, once she found out, had insisted that everybody come to her house. She'd slowly become a part of their little group, but hung out more with Kyoka and surprisingly Tenya. So there they were, with Tenya, Momo, Kyoka, Yuga, and Tsuyu, and her inside Momo's room, which was absolutely enormous. Just like her house, watching the conference from her personal TV while they had snacks. It struck her mind that all of them had positive and sometimes very personal interactions with the VOD. Momo had been with 3,636 constantly since the internship. Kyoka's had hers with Cut Up, Yuga with Fordo, Tsuyu with Monk, and Tenya with Waxer and Boyle, which according to them, were desperately trying to help Tenya get the stick out of his ass. She wondered if it would work or not. And finally her, who'd been Izuku and Django's first friend and had quickly become a friend of the VOD in general, although it was extremely difficult to learn all their names. It'd be so much easier if their armor had something to tell them apart like the commanders. Now there was an idea. But anyways, that is an unjust question. Tenya roared at the reporter, his arm chopping rapidly. The VOD had no choice and neither did Izuku. Tenya, please calm down. It's not like that reporter can hear you. Kyoka said with a grin. They'd never seen Tenya this agitated. Tenya blushed and sat back down. My apologies, but I cannot withstand to see this travesty of journalism. It's practically an injustice of dash. Tenya, you're at it again, Ochako pointed at the screen. Besides, look at how Aizawa-sensei and Principal Nizu are defending him. Whoa, I don't think I've ever seen Aizawa-sensei so passionate, Ribbit. I think angry is the better word. Kyoka muttered. Sacreblue. They're training him for a provisional license. We won't get those until next year at the earliest. Yuga exclaimed, and the group began to excitedly talk about it. That's so cool. It is only fitting for such an inspiring hero like Izuku. Bruh, the VOD must be celebrating super hard right now. My goodness, I hope that he'll be ready. Ribbit. I do wonder how this will affect our finals. Momo wondered aloud, and while the others did give the comment some thought, their attention was soon grabbed by the next reporter's question. Are you intending on replacing All Might? They listened carefully as Izuku explained why he became a hero, and also of what was to come, and how he wanted to inspire hope to the people throughout the times. I am the rising symbol of hope, Mandalore. So yes, I want the world to know that no matter what comes our way, I am here. Yes, he said it. Ochako exclaimed as she pumped her fist in excitement. Bravo, Izuku.
Henry. Go, mon ami.
Huh, Greenie actually decided to go through with it. He's actually intending on replacing All Might? Whoa, Ribbit. It looked like the conference was currently being overwhelmed by the onslaught of questions and cameras, so they took the time to talk and explain to the new members of their group what Izuku's intentions were. But Izuku knows that he can't do it alone, which is why he wants us to stand by his side. I have no idea what he intends to do with us, but I trust him. Tenya said as the conference finally began to die down and more questions were answered. But the question remained in their minds, and they only half paid attention to the conference. Izuku said he wanted them to stand by his side. So what exactly did he want to do? Shoto smiled softly as he leaned against his mother's shoulder, the cool warmth, if that made sense, filling a hole that he didn't know existed until after the sports festival. They'd been watching the conference as an assignment from Aizawa, and his mother expressed interest in watching it with him. Is that him? Yes, he's the one who made me realize the truth. That this power was my own, and that I needed to take responsibility for my actions. He said as he looked at both of his hands. Such a vile reporter. I do wonder what they're thinking bringing up a question like that. Why, it reminds me of when your Ray cut herself off as she glanced at Shoto, who stiffened slightly at the mention of him. Anyway, it's nice to see that UA is supporting him so much, but isn't a provisional license a bit too much at that age? I know that UA reserves it for second years and above. With everything that's going on, I'm honestly not surprised, especially after he fought the hero killer. The hero killer? Indeed. I'll tell you more later. I am the rising symbol of hope, Mandalore. So yes, I want the world to know that no matter what comes our way, I am here. That's a lofty goal. Do you think he can handle it? Once, Todoroki would have looked at the conference with disdain and scoffed at Midoriya's declaration, assured that with only half his power he would be strong enough to defeat All Might. Now, Shoto sees the truth and knows that power is not all that is needed to become a symbol of peace, of hope. As he sees Midoriya smile brightly even with the cameras blinding him and the enormous amount of questions launched at him, he realizes a simple truth. The journey ahead will be difficult, but I believe that out of any of us, Midoriya has the capability of being that symbol of hope. Him and the VOD. And perhaps, once Shoto could find it in him to forgive himself for his actions, perhaps he could stand by him and show his support. Bakugo could only tremble in his rage, but he kept silent. Ever since Deku's clone had popped up, everything had changed for him, and no matter how much he trained, how much he fought, how much he put into being the best, it seemed that Deku was always one step ahead of him. And now this mockery about replacing All Might and being the #1 hero, it was inconceivable. So why? Why were things changing so much? When did Deku turn from the pebble on the side of the road to the unsurpassable mountain? When did he become so weak? Bakugo steadfastly ignored the pain in his heart and simply let his rage fuel him. I'll show you, Deku. You and all your clones. Why exactly am I going to be #1? Izuku tiredly walked out of the conference room. The entire thing lasted almost 2 hours, and he'd been constantly bombarded with questions after questions. Fortunately, Nizu and Aizawa had ended the conference, and they'd been able to leave. Certainly not how I expected to live my Saturday. Now you know why I hate the media. Bunch of vultures. Give them the slightest hint of meat and they go tearing at it. Izuku snorted at Aizawa's description, but agreed. Turning around the corner, he found his mother and Eri, the girl shyly coming up to him as if to ask him something. Izuku tilted his head and asked her if she needed anything. Eri could only shuffle her feet a bit before raising her arms up, asking him to carry her again. Izuku softly smiled. Of course, Eri. Anytime you want me to pick you up, just ask, he said as he hefted her up and set her on his side. Sorry about the armor, though. It's probably uncomfy, huh? It's fine, she whispered. But I need to get out of it anyway. Here, let's go. I'll even show you how it works. Okay, she whispered as she leaned her head on his shoulder plating. Even though the metal was hard, it still radiated warmth. Soon enough they made it to one of the locker rooms. Inko had joined them because she was secretly recording the interactions between them. Eri sat down on the bench while Izuku took off every piece, showing her where the straps were before placing them in his suitcase. He had to temporarily leave her alone with his mother as he changed out of the undersuit, but the process was quick and painless. The final thing left was his helmet, which he noticed that Eri was paying attention to the most. Want to try it on? Can I? Of course, he said as he placed the helmet over her head. It was obviously far too large for her and slumped over her face, but it was also extremely cute to see. Finally, he took it off her and placed it in the suitcase. Closing it, he put it in the right bin where it disappeared into a chute and picked Eri back up. There, much better, right IK, little one? Great. I don't know about you, but I'm starving. Are you hungry? Rumble. Sorry. No need to be sorry. Just means that you're hungry too. Let's find something to eat. Maybe we can even find an apple. I'd like that. I'm sure you would, let's go. Izuku said as he walked out the room with Eri on his hip. Inko slyly pressed the button on her phone to stop recording, extremely happy to see Izuku so content and proactive with the girl. It reminded her of when he was a young boy before Django came. Django, Inko thought to herself as a few tears began to slide down her cheeks. She pulled out her phone and sent a quick text. Would you mind coming by for dinner tonight? Toshi is typing. Toshi, of course not. Are you all right? Just memories. I have a special video to show you later. Toshi, I look forward to seeing it. I wish that I could have been there for the conference, but Nisa said it would cause even more problems. I know, but Izuka did well. He told me that he followed your advice. About smiling.
Toshi, I'm glad.
I'm very proud of him. As am I. Toshi, tonight then? Tonight. Inko hummed as she grabbed a handkerchief and wiped away her tears. She didn't need her son to start worrying over her now. After all, he was so busy nowadays. No, she wouldn't add to his worries. None at all. Toshinori sighed as he put his phone on a side table and then leaned back into the Bacta tank, Chio and Kix adjusting the straps for him. Any progress so far? Very little, but the fact that some of the agitated tissue is healing is a plus. Kix said as he put the mask on. All right, let's do this. He said as he put on the mask and closed his eyes. The water was comfortably cool as it began to cover his body, and he sighed as he eventually went to sleep under the water. After a few hours, he was let go, and once he was dry and clothed, he would make his way back home to change into something more comfortable so that he could meet up with Inko. Recovery Girl did his standard checkup, going over his vitals and some deep scans. Kix was actually with her to provide a second eye and some backup. He was doing well as her personal apprentice. Toshinori was already expecting for nothing to have changed. After all, they'd already been through 5 sessions since the sports festival, and still no progress had been made. Which is why he was surprised when Kix suddenly gasped and gestured at a spot on his deep scan, Chio's eyes widening soon after. Chio? She quickly did another more centralized scan along his abdomen and Toshinori gulped, the slightest bit of hope welling up inside of him. She raised a hand and waited with bated breath for the scan to come back. Once it did, she and Kix looked it over and tears began to well up in her eyes. Chio? Kix? Toshinori, she shakily said as she flipped the scan to show his abdominal cavity. While it was mostly empty due to loss of his stomach, she pointed toward a small, in the center. These are gastrointestinal cells, the ones that make up the stomach. Toshinori gasped in shock as he stared at the picture in front of him. It was small, perhaps only half a centimeter at most, but if it's true.
I'm regenerating,
he said as his heart began to fill with hope. Yes, Chio said with a trembling smile as Toshinori began to shake in excitement and shock. Check my lungs, he asked, and they did so. With another scan, they saw the second part of a miracle. It looks like your tracheal keel, that's the bottom of your trachea where it branches out, on the left side is starting to extend again. More cells are reproducing, Kix said with wonder. The scar tissue is being repaired, but on a far slower scale than the actual organs themselves. If we can expect these results, then you could have your lung and stomach back by the end of the year. You'll probably still have a scar, but who cares? Toshinori said with a grin as he picked Chio up and hugged her deeply and began to spin around, laughing loudly. Toshinori. Ha 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 bleg. He coughed out some blood and set her down before sitting back down. Damn it, you oaf, Chio said, but without any of its usual bite. I get that you're happy, but the recovery process can't be exacerbated by you doing such strenuous physical activity. She tried to be stern, but the teary grin on her face betrayed her. Right. I can't believe it. It's wonderful. If it's working with deep, old injuries like yours, we can definitely fix up Ida's older brother. Why? This could revolutionize medical technology as we know it, Kix said excitedly. Which is why for the time being it must be kept quiet. The three of them looked in surprise at the new voice, and it turned out to be Nizu, who was smiling grandly at Toshinori. I'm very happy to hear about your recovery, Toshinori. But as it stands, we cannot let the general public know about young Midoriya's medical technology at this current time. As it is, He is already under heavy scrutiny due to his own strength and the increasing strength of the VOD both in numbers and in technology. Nizu walked over to the three and inspected the scans for himself. Just 2 days ago, he created a hovering motorcycle, something that has yet to be seen even with the current technology found at Island. Already we've seen that Legion has shown to adapt to his needs. When he needed companionship, the VOD. When he needed range and a way for his brothers to fight, an armory was formed. When his brothers needed medical attention, a medical ward alongside this revolutionary Bacta. Nizu then began to ponder out loud. Now begs the question, what will come next? He needed a quick escape, so the hoverbike was formed. What about when he needs more firepower? Will he create tanks? Or what about a way to quickly transport troops by ground, air, or even sea? Will his quirk provide flight capabilities?
Trop transport.
He then gave a pointed glance to Toshinori. And that's without adding one for all as a factor. As we've already seen, he's been in contact with your predecessors, your master primarily. According to him, Haikage has experience with swordsmanship, and after much research, I may have found a lead as to what, but that's a conversation for another day. And the same night that he created the hoverbike, he used float. A silence remained between the four as they began to ponder his words. So that means, Kix began, that you want to keep VOD's abilities on the down low as much as possible, especially cause of the HPSC. Indeed, young Kix. The VOD had already been briefed about the HPSC with the warning that they should keep it to themselves. All of them had agreed unanimously, and kept a wary eye for any disturbances that may occur whenever a representative would come by for meetings with Nizu. I think I see what you're getting at, Principal Nizu. Izuku already has the potential to be one of Japan's greatest heroes. Not only that, but alongside the VOD, one of the most widespread. In my prime, I could move from one side of Japan to another in less than an hour. He'll be far stronger. Any emergency, any situation, and he could be there in the blink of an eye with his brothers already on the case. Chio gulped at the implications and could only hope that he'd have a handle on his power by the time he reached that point. Nizu nodded grimly. Japan's self-defense force is our only military organization. Midoriya's quirk practically makes him another. You're worried about him on an international level as well? Chio stated, and Nizu could only nod in reply. Yes, but that is a conversation for another time. So far he does not have the reputation necessary for him to be a concern on that high of a playing field. Nizu assured them. Right now our main focus is the HPSC and how we must keep him out of their hands. So then why the provisional license? Why not wait until next year? Kix asked as his arms crossed in slight annoyance. To protect him, we intend to fully teach him the laws and regulations required so that he knows how far he can act before supervisory intervention is required, which gives him much more freedom to act and protects him by expanding his limits within the law. What about the rest of his classmates, his friends? He'd want the same for them. Toshinori asked. As would I, but at the moment, they are not ready for the responsibility. To be frank, neither is Midoriya, but our hand is being forced in this case. Class A will continue on schedule. I don't like it. Sounds to me like you're making Ori VOD a chess piece. But I also know that you care about him, just like you cared about Django. Kix said as he began to put up his stuff. After all, his shift was over for the day. Besides, we both know that if something were to happen to Izuku either cause of you or the HPSC, there'd be very little that could stop us. Kix mentioned as he walked out the door. Kix, Chio said as she got up to go after him. No, Chio, it's all right. Besides, he is correct. Either way, I do have Midoriya's best intentions in mind, but right now his comparison is apartment. Unfortunately, we are all pieces in this game, but my priorities have always been the students. Nizu said as he began to leave as well. We'll talk more later. I do believe that you have a special someone to tell the good news to, don't you, Toshinori? Toshinori sputtered. Why, you know as well? Please, Toshinori, I put money on it, Nizu cackled as he walked out the door. Huh, well that explains why Mike was so grouchy the other day with me, and kept saying that I should have waited till after the summer. You dumb oaf. That night, Midoriya residence. Toshinori excitedly walked through the door to what felt like an actual home. Sure, he had his apartment, but it sometimes felt so lonely there. The Midoriya apartment, on the other hand, truly felt like home. Tashinori, I'm glad to see your hero, Inko exclaimed in surprise as Tashinori buffed up for a moment and twirled her around. She began to giggle as he laughed in joy. Ha ha ha, what's got you in such a mood? She asked with the smile that always made his heart flutter. I've got the most wonderful news, Inko. The Bacta treatments, they're working, Tashinori said as he poofed back into his skinny form. Inko gasped in shock and then hugged him in elation. That's amazing, sire, beloved. So that means that you're healing? Yes. Cells are starting to grow where my stomach was, and it looks like my left lung is regenerating, he said before kissing her deeply. It was not their first kiss. That had come some time ago. Their relationship was still relatively new. It had started a few days before the sports festival, Tashinori stopping by more and more to help the grieving mother and in turn share his own grief. They had gone out for dinner, just some bentos, and sat down at the park and reminisced about Django and their memories. Then it just spiraled from there. Soon enough, Tashinori found himself passing by every day, sometimes more than once, sometimes for the entire day before or after work, stopping by for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Sometimes she would cook, sometimes him. It then continued with soft touches that set fire to his skin. His hand on her shoulder, her hand on his arm. Gentle hugs whenever he came and whenever he left. Soft kisses on his cheek, just barely, ever so slightly away from the corner of his lips. He held her tightly whenever the days and memories became too much as she grieved her lost sons. And in turn she held him as he broke down from the weight of the world on his shoulders, his heart broken by the people he couldn't save due to his reduced time. And one day, as they were huddled in blankets on the couch as a movie finished, he turned towards her and she towards him, and they simply kissed. Tashinori felt complete with her, as if something had been missing for a long time that only just now he realized existed. And Inko felt happy that she had found someone that was there for her, and for her son, after the Demigolka left them. Although they had yet to Izuku, they were still figuring out a way to break it to him. Sure, they had no doubts that he'd be happy for them, and he already considered Tashinori a father, but it would still no doubt be awkward for the three of them. As they separated, Inko smiled brightly at him as they sat down and grabbed her phone. That reminds me, I have to show you something. It is the most adorable thing ever. Inko then showed him the videos she took of Izuku interacting with Eri, and also a multitude of pictures. This is when he fed her an apple. Oh, and this is when he decided to give her a ride on his shoulders. He let her try on his helmet. Isn't that so cute? Oh, and then she had to take a nap, and he just held her so protectively. It was so cute. Tashinori was glad to see her happy and smile so widely. Many times she looked so solemn and forlorn that it was a relief to see her so joyful. Eventually they had dinner. His portion was much lighter, but one day he hoped to have a full meal, and they talked about their day. Tashinori explained to her about what Nizu mentioned while at the same time promising that he would continue to watch over Izuku. Later they watched another movie and she fell asleep halfway through, her head on his chest, lulled to sleep by the rhythm of his heartbeat. As she breathed gently, Tashinori could only look at her in admiration and love. Still though, it was getting late. As gently as he could, he got up and picked her up bridal style before carrying her to her room. Gently settling her on the bed and covering her with a blanket, he kissed her on the forehead and quietly turned to leave. A gentle hand grasped his wrist, and he turned to see her looking at him pleadingly. Tashinori, stay.
Inko-i.
I just don't want to be alone tonight. Can you stay and hold me, please? She asked. Tashinori didn't even last 5 seconds before nodding and laying down on the bed as she made room for him. He then gently wrapped his arms around her as she pressed her body against his, the sweet smell of her shampoo and her warmth practically encompassing his senses. She then turned so that she was facing him, giving him a gentle kiss to his chin. Thank you, Toshi. Of course, Inko. Snuggling so that her head was against his breast, she murmured incoherently but contently as she listened to his heartbeat once more. I love you, Toshi, she whispered softly in the night. Tashinori gulped as an incomprehensible feeling swelled up in his chest. Countless times he heard those words as all might, but this was one of the few times someone had said it to Tashinori. Most notably Nana and Izuku. "I love you too, Inko," he whispered into her hair, and she smiled. Soon enough, they both fell asleep, more content than they had been in years. UA Infirmary. Izuku gently stroked Eri's head as she fell back asleep again. The poor thing had another nightmare and was refusing to sleep. He'd so far run out of ideas and therefore just went with his gut. Nuhoi. At Ika, sleep, little one. Garna Sire Ika, you are my sweetheart. And I Jahiligar, I will watch over you. Akavartur, until morning. Nuhoi. At Ika, sleep, little one. Garna Sire Ika, you are my sweetheart. And I Lararigar, I will sing to you. Akavartur, until morning. Nuhoi. At Ika, sleep, little one. Garna Sire Ika, you are my sweetheart. And I Kabuar Gar, I will protect you. Akavartur, until morning. Credit to the mischief of Tad on Tumblr. As he gently sang the lullaby, Eri's eyes slowly began to fall once more, and she returned to a peaceful slumber. Izuku continued to sing for a moment until he was sure that she was completely asleep. Sighing deeply, he looked up towards the ceiling and his thoughts ran rampantly. He was quite simply worried. So far, they didn't know anything about her. Only basic health stats, no home of record, no birth certificate, nothing. And she was obviously an extremely traumatized child, who'd undergone who knows what under her captors. He'd spoken with Nizu and Aizawa, and although they regretted having to implement such a responsibility, they both agreed that he was the best option for taking care of Eri since he was the only one to have her complete trust. Nizu likened it to imprinting behaviors that some animals would go through in their infancy. His mother had joked about becoming a BA, but now that he gave it some thought, he was honestly petrified. He was far too young. Could he provide what she needed even with Yue's help? Could he be what she needed? Izuku's train of thought paused as Eri mumbled and held him tighter, her head digging into his shoulder before she sighed contently. He slowly turned to face her. Although he couldn't see her face very well due to the angle, he could tell that her expression was calm, peaceful. With him, she felt safe. Isn't that what he was working toward? Isn't that what he wanted to become? Wasn't that what it meant to be Mandalore? If he wasn't ready but Eri felt that he was trustworthy enough, then he would become what she needed. Sighing deeply again, he kissed her forehead and closed his own eyes, ready to go back to sleep. Sleep well, Sire Ika. The next morning, Izuku walked through the halls of UA, unheeding to the stares and whispers of those around him. Fortunately, nobody decided to approach him. Well, Monoma tried to, but Kendo quickly knocked him out and dragged him away. He stopped outside the door and with a deep breath walked in. Morning every dash. Izuku. Midoriya. Midori.
Mon ami.
Dude, that conference was so manly. Are you really gonna try and replace All Might? Bro, you're getting your provisional license. We're not even done with our first term. Izuku blanked at the assault of words on his ears, but was fortunately rescued by the bell ringing. Good morning, everyone, Aizawa said as he walked in to see everybody in their seats. Good morning, Sensei. All right, so first things first. I'm assuming that everyone watched yesterday's conference. First off, we want to establish that this is in no way what we originally had planned. Provisional licenses are a major responsibility. You have more freedom to act, and conversely you are under that much more scrutiny. UA students don't apply for them until second year at the earliest. Aizawa said as the class began to get jittery. Sensei, does that mean that we will?
No.
Some of the class began to complain, Bakugo being the loudest. Aizawa flashed his quirk and silence returned. As I said, Midoriya's case is special, especially due to him capturing the public eye. Many teachers, including me, don't even think he's ready, which is why he'll be undergoing an intensive training schedule to prepare him for this cycle's exam. Aizawa-sensei. Kaminari raised his hand. What will we be doing then? Good question. The rest of you will still be preparing for your finals, remember? You have both a physical and academic portion, and you have a week left. Make sure you train your bodies and minds, he said before beginning class. Once class was over, he reminded them about one last thing. We're nearing summer vacation, but it's not logical for you to rest during an entire month. Don't tell me. That's why we'll have a training camp in the woods. The class began to shout in excitement, wondering about all the activities they'd be able to do and the potential training they'd undergo. However, Aizawa exclaimed with a slight flash of his quirk. Those who don't pass the final exam will instead be in summer school hell. Training is already hell enough as it is. What could he have planned? Everybody, do your best. This is so damn stupid. Girls, you gotta make it. As the class began to talk, Aizawa walked over to Izuku's desk. Oh, Midoriya, with me? Yes, sensei. They headed out to the hallway and Aizawa began to speak. I'm sure you have questions about what your finals are going to be like. As it is, you'll still have to do the academic portion, but instead of the practical we had originally planned, your license exam will be your practical instead. Izuku nodded as they approached an office. Unfortunately, we only have a week to prepare you. Nisa wanted to push for the next cycle, but we were forced to compromise with this one, which means that it's going to be a serious time crunch. Entering, Izuku saw that Nizu, All Might, and Cody were already there. Hello, young Midoriya. VOD. Hello, my boy. Sirs, VOD. What's going on? Before we begin your physical training, we want to prepare you mentally for what the provisional license exam will entail. Nizu said as he passed a tablet to him. Izuku looked it over and saw that he was the #1 topic on social media sites right now. Hero student aims to take All Might's place. Mandalore. Rising symbol of peace? Midoriya Izuku. From USJ to Stain. All Might's potential successor? Earliest student to take provisional license exam. Mandalore. All that and more, and he didn't even want to look at the comments. Izuku gulped as he considered everything that happened recently and backtracked. Aries rescue, the fight against Stain, the internship in general, the sports festival. His eyes widened in understanding. Indeed, Aizawa said with a hint of contentment in his voice. Good of you to catch on. What else? I've gotten a lot of publicity lately, and there's bound to be people that have a grudge against me either out of jealousy of myself or simply envy since I'm a UA student. Correct. Nexus drank some tea. The sad truth of the matter is that there are many who don't live up to UA's standards and therefore go to other schools. Although many take their defeat as a lesson well learned and grow, many more are resentful and take it out on UA students when the moment arrives. The sports festival broadcasted all my abilities as well as my recent fight with Stain. Izuku took a deep breath. How many schools will be there? At least 10, including our rival school Shiketsu and other notable schools such as Ketsubutsu. On average, there are around 1,200 examinees per cycle, the majority of them repeats. And they'll all be coming for me. Am I the only UA student this cycle? Unfortunately, yes. All our third-year students have their licenses, and while only half our second-year students managed to get them during the last cycle during the break, the rest are in remedial classes. They're not going to take the actual exam again with you. So I'll be alone, against 1,000 students all aiming to take me down. No, not alone. You'll have us, VOD. Cody said as he punched his open palm. Izuku grinned in relief. Well, it's always been us against the world, right? Right. Now, unfortunately, the other commanders and I won't be available. Another damn stipulation from the HPSC. They want to see how you do without potential risks of cheating that we could bring as commanders due to our close relationship with UA faculty, but we've been training one of the VODE to take our place and stand by you. Cody said before facing the door. You can come in now. Another clone walked into the room and saluted. I present to you, CT 7576, otherwise known as Captain Rex. Later that day, Izuku walked with his head a little higher. Granted, he was still worried about the exam itself, but he felt confident knowing that his brothers would be by his side. Later on, he would join the commanders in the so-called war room to discuss possible strategies and tactics to implement as well as plans for whatever situations may arise during the exam. At the moment, however, he had something far more pressing to take care of. He had called for his closest friends, Ochako, Tenya, Kyoka, and Yuga to join him so that he could introduce them to Eri. He felt that having more human interaction would help her out in the long run. Izuku knocked on the door and opened it and Eri immediately perked up once she saw him.
Hello, Eri.
Hello, she said quietly, but not as quietly as before, her eyes ever so brighter as she looked at him. Still no smile, but he could tell that progress was being made. He quickly came up to her and gave a quick hug, which she quickly returned. The clone that was with her gave a quick nod and salute and left. Eri, I'd like to introduce you to some more people. They're my closest friends and I trust them with my own life. They fought beside me and have helped me get to where I am today. Oh, is it all right if I invite them in? Will you stay? Of course. You guys can go ahead and come in. Slowly, the four walked in and took seats in the room. They'd already been briefed about what Eri's life had been like so far, so Tenya would keep his hand chopping to a minimum. He sputtered in response to that, and Yuga would keep his flamboyant tendencies down as well. These are my friends, Eri, Izuku said before nodding at them.
I Eritrea, I Muchaku.
It's so nice to meet you. My name is Tenya. It is a pleasure to meet you. I'm Kyoka. Nice to meet you, kid.
Je m'appelle Yuga, Mademoiselle Eri.
Huh. His name's Yuga, and it's nice to meet you. Sorry, he's a French fry. Kyoka snarked as Yuga sputtered in offense. Mon ami, how many times must I tell you? French fries are not French. Guys, please. Ochako said as she leaned forward towards Eri.
Sorry.
Desol. So, what do you like to do, Eri? Ochako asked as they all got to know her. They spent the rest of the day doing drawings and playing with some toys with her. Ochako used her quirk to make things float around as Eri curiously poked at them while Yuga made sparkles appear around her, much to her amazement. Izuku smiled as he saw Eri interacting with them. Granted, she was much shyer with them, but he could see that she was slowly opening up her shell around other people and knew that this would do wonders for her recovery. Izuku, Ochako whispered, and he turned towards her. Eri was currently being presented a show with hand puppets by Tenya and Kyoka with Yuga doing voiceovers. It was super funny. He didn't know how, but Tenya still managed to make the puppet do arm chops with just his finger. Yeah. The people who did this, are they? They're still out there, and they might still be looking for her, but I won't let them touch her. Ochako nodded. Good, well, you can count on us to help you with that. Thanks. Izuku said as he watched Eri pay rapt attention to the show, her eyes slowly getting brighter and brighter with each passing moment. Izuku was glad that he could trust his friends to help him with her recovery. He was glad that, well, that he'd met them in the first place. Already they'd been through so much, ever since the USJ. As he pondered his closest friendships, he then wondered, can I trust them with my biggest secret? Can I trust them with one for all? Izuku gulped and steadied his breathing. He would have to speak to Tashinori about it, but he felt that he could, and that filled his heart with peace. A secret lair. It's so interesting to see how much things have changed. Wouldn't you say so, Doctor? First, the hero killer is taken down by the Ninth, and quite publicly as well. I admit, I didn't quite expect that. But it looks like everything else is going just as planned. With his perceived connection to the League, those that have become inspired by him, or those that simply wish to relieve themselves of their shackles will flock to them to find that release. All for one pondered as he sat down in his chair, hooked up to the various machines that kept him alive. Tamura Shigaraki will finally be put in the position needed to unify them, but only if he can handle it. I still believe that things will progress faster if you go out before them, Master. All for one chuckled. Then hurry up and fix my body, Doctor. If only we'd managed to get super regeneration earlier, but once the wounds healed it became useless. The doctor said as he approached from behind. Still, leader of the League of Villains, huh? Do you truly believe that the child is ready? It's fine. I'll have him work hard so that he can become the next me. The boy was already born with the twisted sense needed for that, but recently his growth has already been increased exponentially thanks to the actions of the Ninth. He said as he slowly caressed a screen with Shigaraki's image. Enjoy your false victory while you can. All Might. Enjoy this farce of a temporary peace. All for one smiled. After all, soon enough the people will need hope, won't they? He asked mockingly as he turned to another screen. Although he couldn't see, he knew very well the image the screen displayed. Midoriya Izuku. Author. Tada. Thank you all for your patience. I know that this chapter didn't have much action, but we'll be coming to that soon enough. I hope that you all especially enjoyed the interactions with Eri, Protect the Unicorn Child. And yes, Tashinko is now rolling. No Omax for today, but I'll be doing extensions of previous Omax into one-shot chapters with scenes that I want to do for those ideas, so keep an eye out for that. That doesn't mean that they'll become full stories, but I do want to get the ideas out there. I'm almost done with my schooling for my rate, so the next chapter will probably come out late November. Just so you know. Thank you all again. Until next time. P.S. Could anybody help me with a Spanish translation? Also, I'm a huge sucker for MHA React Fix to AUs if anybody would like to make one. Wink wink.